when you're ready. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Harrisburg City Council Public Hearing. My name is Wanda R.D. Williams. I'm the chair and all city council members. Today is Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. I'm now calling this meeting to order at 5:15 p.m. I will now turn it over to Mr. Wes Majors, who is the chair of Public Works. Mr. Majors.
Thank you, President Williams. So we're going to start with a public hearing of the Public Works Committee to consider Bill 17 of 2021, an ordinance vacating and striking from the official map of the city of Harrisburg two unnamed grocers alleys. Hold on, excuse me. Yeah, do you mind just pulling the door? Yeah. Thank you. All right, so I'll just finish with the bill and then I'll do a brief roll call. All right, so we're going to do Bill 17 of 2021, an ordinance vacating and striking from the official map of the city of Harrisburg two unnamed grocers alleys within the block bounded by North 3rd Street, Clinton Street, Logan Street, and Hamilton Street, pursuant to Chapter 3-109 of the Codified Ordinances of the city of Harrisburg. And we will do a brief roll call here first. So, Mr. Allett.
Present.
Ms. Green. Excuse me, Ms. Bowers.
Present.
Ms. Green.
Present.
Ms. Daniels. Mr. Madsen. Guess Mr. Majors is me, and then President Williams.
Present.
Thank you. All right. Then I will turn it first over to the solicitor for any initial comments first, and then over to, and then have the applicants sworn in.
Just as a preface, so this is a street vacation for two alleys. And for clarification, the initial application, and I tried to make this clear in the bill for all of you, was for 4 alleys. During the process of getting this drafted, it was reduced down to 2. And at this point, I'll turn it over to the applicants.
Well, I'll do a little bit more introduction. Good evening, council members. As noted, this application involves the block of bounded by Hamilton, Clinton, and Logan streets as well. The vacation of the small rights of way known as grocers alleys are necessary to effectuate the consolidation and development of the block with a mixed-use building featuring a community center with 12 apartments, 8 townhomes, and off-street parking, and as well as associated site and access improvements. The applicants have received the requisite zoning relief approval from the zoning hearing board for the aspects of the project not in conformance with the zoning code. And they've also submitted a lot consolidation, subdivision, and land development plan concurrent with this street vacation request, which I believe will be reviewed later tonight. And with that, I'll hand it off to the applicants.
Okay. And before we turn it over to the applicants, we have them sworn in by the stenographer.
I do.
Yes.
All right. If you could give us your names for the record.
Matt Long, Midtown Redevelopment.
And I'm Jeff Schick with K&W Engineers.
Okay. Could you please repeat that just so if the mic was off, just so we have it for the record.
Jeff Schick, SHYK.
Matt Long, Midtown Redevelopment.
All right. Okay, proceed.
Okay. As Jeffrey Knight was saying, the rights of way that were the grocers alleys that we're requesting to vacate are allows us to develop the property fully for 8 townhouses and an apartment building as well, and associated parking, stormwater, and landscape. It's pretty much it. there's not, there's not a significant, and these are very small, in fact. I mean, they're 4 foot and 5 foot, if I'm not mistaken, in width. Yeah, 3 foot and 4 foot. So the owner has secured all of his necessary signatures from adjacent property owners to affect the vacation of the right of the street grocers alleys. So if there's any questions, we can certainly address those.
All right, thank you. Do you have anything else to add, Mr. Knight, before I turn over to questions from members from council?
No, I mean, certainly if you have questions about the concurrent development plan, I think maybe those can be asked here. We're at the review of that case as well, but we'll be happy to provide any responses to city council members' questions on those.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start with questions to my immediate left. Mr. Allen, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions at this time.
All right, President Williams.
Thank you. Have you followed all the conditions that were recommended by the Harrisburg Planning Commission?
As part of the actual land development,
No, they recommended by a vote of 6-0, but they recommended that you approve the following conditions.
we will, yes, we'll address all of those as part of our revised plans.
Okay, so you haven't addressed them now.
That's correct.
How long before you address those issues? Because they're important.
They'll be addressed within the next few weeks.
Have you also have you heard from Capital Region Water, the Law Bureau, and the Police Bureau? Because they didn't provide comments, so I was wondering if you have any comments. No, Isaac.
The Law Bureau didn't provide written comment to be attached, but we don't have any issues with the
How
application.
about Capital Region Water and the Police Bureau?
I have not heard from either of them. Maybe Mr. Knight has heard from Capital Region Water.
I'll come back to you. Some questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. I see Mr. Madsen has arrived, but I'll let you have a moment to get settled. Councilperson Green.
No, I don't have any questions on this. Thank you.
All right. And Councilperson Bowers.
Thank you. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Again, seeing that this is at this point, this is solely just focused on the street vacation. We still have a land development plan that still has to come through and come before us. I don't know, Mr. Madsen, did you have any questions on this? I don't have any questions regarding this particular street vacation at this time. Do you have any questions or comments?
No, we'll wait for the land development plan.
Okay, Mr. Majors, because I was concerned about the engineer, but that will come.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then seeing that I said you have all the requisite signatures from the adjoining landowners, property owners, and it seems to be okay with that. I will ask that we have if there's anyone from the public that may want to make a comment regarding Bill 17, that you come to the mic. And then regarding Bill 17, regarding the street vacation, I'll look to my right. Anyone from the public? In the middle? To the left? All right, seeing none, hearing none, this will conclude the public hearing for Bill 17, and we can move forward and place it on a agenda for, I believe we have, I can't remember. For our next legislative, this is 14th meeting, excuse me, not the meeting proceeded following this. Thank you. And at 5:28, this meeting of this hearing of the Public Works Committee is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We adjourned, I'm sorry. It's not, yep, no, we're good.
Adjourn.
And guess we'll be. Turn it back over to President Williams.
Thank you. Majors. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Harrisburg City Council. This is a special legislative session. My name is Wanda R.D. Williams. I'm chair, and all city council members. Today is Tuesday, December the 7th, 2021. I'm now calling this meeting to order at 5:34 p.m. Ms. Houston, please do the roll call.
Mr. Allen,
Present.
Ms. Bowers,
Present.
Ms. Daniels,
Here.
Ms. Green,
Present.
Mr. Madsen,
Here.
Mr. Majors,
Here.
President Williams.
Present. Moving on to the invocation. Ms. Green, would you please do the invocation?
Yes. Don't worry. I would just like to take some time to keep everyone in the city in your thoughts and prayers, especially through the holiday season. Just remember to keep the spirit of the season in mind. If you can give back, give back. If you can help, help. That's what a true community is made of. And I know Harrisburg is a true community. So if we could just take a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Majors, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Majors. We now move on to communications. We have none this evening. We now move on to courtesy of the floor. At this time, anyone who would like to come to the mic, please do so. Please start at my right. Please use this mic to my far right. Anyone to my right would like to come to the mic at this time to discuss anything on this agenda. Good evening.
My name is Kevin Sidella. I represent the Central Pennsylvania Building Council. We're here to talk about the responsible contractor language that you have on your agenda and an amendment that we're hoping is going to get introduced tonight to it. We want to talk just briefly about the merits of doing this. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to talk about it or wait for the bill.
You can wait till work session and talk about it.
Okay.
So we can bring you forth.
All right.
Give you an opportunity to sit here and speak about it.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else on my right? In the middle? To my left? Okay. Moving on to resolutions. Resolution 82, 2021. Ms. Houston, please read that into record.
Resolution 82 of 2021 is a resolution ratifying and approving the 2022-2025 Basic Labor Agreement between the City of Harrisburg and Local 521, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, District Council 90.
That will be placed in Budget and Finance Committee. Moving on to Resolution 83, 2021.
Resolution 83 of 2021 is a resolution appointing Mr. Matthew Pianca to serve on the zoning hearing board of the city of Harrisburg.
That will be placed in Community and Economic Development. Moving on to Resolution 84.
Is that building and housing?
I mean, Building and Housing. Did I say? I'm looking right at Ms. Bowers. I'm sorry. I am so sorry, Mr. Manson. Okay, sorry. Resolution 83 will be placed in Building and Housing. Moving on to Resolution 84.
Resolution 84 of 2021 is a resolution appointing Mr. Claude Phipps to serve on the zoning hearing board of the city of Harrisburg.
That also will be placed in Building and Housing. We now move on to Resolution 85.
Resolution 85 of 2021 is a resolution appointing Ms. Anna Bianco to serve on the zoning hearing board of the city of Harrisburg.
That also will be placed in Building and Housing. Moving on to Resolution 86.
Resolution 86 of 2021 is the resolution appointing Mr. Alexander R. Reber to serve on the redevelopment authority of the city of Harrisburg.
And that also will be placed in Building and Housing. Moving on to old business, council members, they're on old business. Moving on to new business. New business. Okay, motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Have a second.
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 Meeting is officially adjourned. We now move on to the city council work session. Wanda R.D. Williams, I'm the chair. All the city council members. Today is Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. We will now call the work session to order, and I'm calling it to order at 5:40 p.m. We will now conduct a roll call again, please, Ms. Houston.
Mr. Allett.
Present.
Ms. Bowers.
Present.
Ms. Daniels.
Here.
Ms. Green.
Present.
Mr. Madsen.
Here.
Mr. Majors.
Here.
President Williams.
Present. Moving on to the Administration Committee. Resolution 86, 2021. I am the Administration Committee Chair. Is Mr. Alex Reber here? Okay. Please read that into record, Ms. Houston.
Resolution 86 of 2021 is a resolution appointing Mr. Alexander R. Reber to serve on the redevelopment authority of the city of Harrisburg.
I have a question, Mr. Grover.
Yes, Madam President.
You had requested that you're going to find out information whether he can serve on two boards.
He is currently a member of the audit committee, and there is nothing in the ordinance establishing the audit committee or in the redevelopment law that prohibits it, unlike the zoning board, which you can't serve on other boars if you're on zoning.
So he can serve.
He
on
can
both.
serve on both,
Right.
yes.
It is my understanding that he will be resigning from the audit committee, though. Okay. All right.
And it's worth noting, because this is the first time one of these ever came to city council. The state changed the law on the redevelopment authority, creating and changing the definitions and moving these to city council appointments in cities across the state. So up until now, they had been mayoral appointments until I think it was 2 years ago when they changed the law. And this is the first one to come through.
Okay. Council members, would you like Mr. Reber to be present next week at the December 14th meeting, or would you want to vote on him, his appointment to the redevelopment authority of the city of Harrisburg?
I think for the benefit of the public, it would be good if he attended.
Okay.
I know Mr. Reber very well.
I think everybody knows him. That's why I asked.
Yeah.
I
have no idea.
Ms. Houston, would you ask him to be here to the December 14th meeting? Thank you. Then we'll move on to Building and Housing Committee, and I will now turn it over to Ms. Bowers.
Thank you, President Williams.
You're welcome.
Ms. Houston, could you please read Resolution 80 of 2021 into the record?
Resolution 80 of 2021 is a resolution appointing Mr. James Hobbs to serve on the zoning hearing board of the city of Harrisburg.
Thank you. I don't believe Mr. Hobbs is present. So I'd like to ask that he also be present
Okay.
during our legislative session meeting on December 14th, please.
Excuse me, Ms. Bowers. Mr. Grover, would you also do an amendment when he comes on December the 14th for Mr. Hobbs as the alternate?
We will make the amended resolution, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers.
Ms. Houston, could you please read Resolution 83 of 2021 into the record?
Resolution 83 of 2021 is a resolution appointing Mr. Matthew Bianca to serve on the zoning hearing board of the city of Harrisburg.
Would you mind coming over, answer a few questions? Thank you. Good evening.
Evening.
Just if you could please take a few minutes to introduce yourself to council and the residents that are viewing tonight.
Right, absolutely. Hello, council members, President Williams, Chair Bowers, Vice President Blatt. How are you guys today? My name's James Matthew Pianka. I've been a resident of Harrisburg all my life. I grew up here uptown and raising my young family and a family of 3, soon to be 4 in the Riverside community right now. And I'm here today to hopefully get appointed to the Zoning and Hearing Board. I have my own business in town that deals with consulting for an affordable housing developer that works in 15 different states. And it's my job to find sites for them that will work for their cookie cutter of affordable housing. And what that entails is going through the local ordinances, the local city zoning codes or county zoning ordinances, and making sure that multifamily or townhouses or single family developments are allowed in those certain areas. So for the last 10 or so years, that's what I have been focused on doing for full-time work. And that is finding sites that work and fit zoning and sewer and water systems for affordable housing developments. And it's why I was honored to have my name put forward for this position. So if you have any other questions, I'm
Thank
here.
you. I'm just curious to know what impact you think you would be able to bring to the zoning hearing board.
My knowledge of zoning codes throughout at least 15 different states, the United States, would just to see if council has any questions on what changes might need to be made here in the city of Harrisburg. But I see the zoning board as a umpire for what's projects that are being brought forth or anything residents would have questions about that. Does it, the question before zoning fit what the zoning code says? And that's what the zoning board is really here to do. Is call balls and strikes. And that's how I see.
Okay, nice analogy.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'll open it up at this time to my colleagues for questioning. Councilwoman Green, do you have any questions?
Not too many, just one. What excites you about wanting to be on the zoning hearing board? Or are you excited?
Oh, absolutely excited. Just a chance to serve my community in a different way other than we had a family business for 20 some years down on City Island. And that was one way to be part of the community. And now, as you know, as I've grown up now, it's time to do something different. And this is a new challenge and it does excite me to get to serve in this type of manner.
All right, that's the only question I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Mattson?
So with your private sector experience, what are your thoughts on the current zoning laws and regulations? Recommend to council to do a little different?
Right now, I think we have a pretty broad zoning going on. The best, I don't want to say best, one of the neatest change you guys have made is the affordable housing plan or addition that you made to how to get a boost in those units. That's something that is really interesting and I've seen across the country and in different cities more than anywhere else. But just maybe more incentivized development of what the city wants to see done. Maybe you can get more units if you have bicycle parking as part of your, I've seen that in like Minnesota or stuff along that lines, or even along environmental lines. If you build up to LEED standards or passive house standards or something along those lines.
Yeah, just to comment for the public. I felt like when we drafted the ordinance, we could have done a better job. While we did include the zoning board's opinion, it felt like we could have collaborated a bit better drafting that. Now that we have more folks coming on, fresh ideas, I think it's a good idea to build off what we've been doing currently. But thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you. President Williams, any questions?
No, I don't have any. I'm very familiar with it.
Okay, thanks. Vice President Allen.
Kind of building a little bit on what Councilmember Madsen mentioned. Zoning has become more of like a hot topic for discussion, and I feel like many conversations have been around zoning going forward. We amended the zoning code back in 2013 and reduced it, I think, from like 20. No, actually, it was over 50 codes. I think like 23. Where do you see, kind of in light of kind of so much discussion on the comprehensive plan and zoning, where do you see us going? Are there other things that we should consider in terms of zoning, and what's your perspective on variances in particular, and how you would take a look at approving variances?
With variances, it really has to meet the state criteria that's set out. There's, I believe, 5 hardships that they have to, if anybody seeking a variance has to, they have to meet those 5 hardships in order to get the variance. But really, it's how will that variance impact the community? Does it negatively, or does that variance make sense for that part of the community to move forward? Would be how I take a look at any variances coming before us. As for changes to the zoning, zoning is one of the places where we have a runoff problem. So maybe going back to the incentivizing developers to do things through the zoning code, you could put in impervious surface or green roof development into the zoning code or into the land use code.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Majors, any questions?
Thank you. Just a couple brief questions. So you mentioned your experience in 15 states. Is Pennsylvania one of those?
Yes, sir.
And do you work on any projects within the city of Harrisburg?
Not right now.
Okay. And then if you were to have that, how would you adjudicate that should something come before the zoning hearing board?
I would have to abstain.
Okay. All right. Again, just want to make sure, if you had any business currently in the city of Harrisburg, we just want to make sure, everything's above board
Absolutely.
right now. And, as we're looking to ensure, additional transparency in government, that, there's nothing currently pending for you in front of currently pending projects in the city of Harrisburg. But I am familiar with you and some of the work that you have done. So thank you for your willingness to serve our community. No other questions at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Daniels, any questions?
Yeah, so normally I ask the conflict of interest question, and here there clearly will be several potential opportunities for conflicts of interest. So you're a consultant, do you have multiple clients or just one client?
Just one client.
Just one client. So the conflicts of interest will really be when the client has properties that come before the zone or competitors who come before this zoning board.
I would
But for
assume,
I guess
both would be.
right.
Yeah.
So do you have a sense of what kind of an estimate of what you see the potentiality of conflict being?
As for zoning, I really don't, because if they come before zoning and it follows the zoning, then you follow the zoning. And if it's a variance, again, it has to find those 5 hardships by state code as well. So, but I'm very much understand where you're coming from, and an abstention would be the correct thing to do.
Yeah, so I think that's probably something Law Bureau should discuss with you, especially if there are, because I think it's more likely competitors, since you don't have business in the city than your client itself. So I think we probably need a legal opinion on it.
And Ms. Daniels, the zoning board had its own solicitor.
Okay.
And so that would be where that piece of advice would come from.
Okay, so that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, comments, okay, thank you very much for being here tonight. I would
Thank you for
ask
having me.
that we move Resolution 83 of 2021 to our next legislative agenda. Thank you. Ms. Houston, could you please read Resolution 84 of 2021 into the record?
Resolution 84 of 2021 is a resolution appointing Mr. Claude Phipps to serve on the zoning hearing board of the city of Harrisburg.
Thank you. Mr. Phipps, could you please join us? Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you could please introduce yourself.
Okay. Good evening, City Council, Honorable Ms. Bowers, and President. My name is Claude Phipps.
Mr. Phipps, if you could please speak into the mic.
Is this better?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. My name is Claude Phipps, city resident. I was born and raised in Harrisburg. Okay, I always tell people first class of Harrisburg High. So I have an investment in the city. I'm a retired business executive. When I retired, I started donating my time and efforts to the city. My view is to restore the city to the grandeur that it was when I was born and raised here. Okay, and I think it's something we can do. Again, my background, I'm pretty sure you guys most people have my resume and stuff. I'm also a certified district judge. Okay, so I've gone to certain places through the law. What I see and with zoning, and I've been in zoning hearings and in planning hearings, most of the time not in support of the resolutions, more or less speaking of for the people of the city. Something that I don't see us doing enough of. They're the voice. Most of the things that are being done by developers or plans, they're not aware of. So they don't get a chance to see the overall impact. They don't see the big picture. Okay, so my idea is that education. We have to get information out to the residents here of what the function of the zoning board is. We're to serve them. We're there to make sure that things develop in the city don't adversely affect them.
So I just have one question before I open it up to my colleagues. What impact do you believe you will be able to bring to the zoning hearing board?
Probably, since I've attended some meetings and I've been in front of the zoning hearing board, I understand some of the inner workings, but I also understand the loss of voice that the average person in the city does not have. Now, I know we as Ms. Bianca said, we're supposed to call balls and strikes, okay? And I see a lot of exceptions coming through. Those exceptions have to really be created against the 5 standards that are set for exceptions from the state. But I also say something too with that. The community, you also, since we're serving the community, we should always keep that in mind. What's going to be the impact of the community? Sometimes it's not in black and white as the people who are presenting the plans appear to be. Sometimes based off of our experiences, and if you've been in Harrisburg, you've seen it go through different types of transitions. I always tell people, and remember, I say this the wrong way about city, we're a diamond in the rough right now. We have to mine that diamond in a way that it serves everyone, the community, to the people who are basically helping fund some of that new development. What we have to keep our eye on this is that we have to make sure that the residents are the beneficiaries, positive beneficiaries.
Thank you. At this time, I will open it up to questions from my colleagues. I'll begin with Councilwoman Daniels.
The same question I ask everyone. Do you anticipate any conflicts of interest as you go through perform your functions on board?
No, being a retiree, I got a lot of free time on my hands, and I've probably been in your businesses down here more often than I'm supposed to be. But I can raise the questions as an honest broker. Okay. Conflicts of interest. I am a community ambassador for Capital Region, and if you've ever gone to any of their presentations, you've always seen me out there carrying their banner. I also had input to the comprehensive plan. Okay, I think I've appeared in front of you guys
appeared in front of everybody and speaking about that. It's the blueprint of what Harrisburg can be. Okay. It's a nice blueprint, but it's a work in progress. And I think people have to understand it's a work in progress. It's basically structure. I always rebuild the house. Okay. We're putting the frame up of the house, but now we've got the color. We have to put walls and the windows and stuff in, but we have to have community involvement with that. So I think I see no conflicts. I also serve on as vice chair of the Fair Housing Council, Fair Housing Board. Okay. I don't see that as a conflict. Okay. It's basically more administrative function. I don't get involved with the day-to-day running of that organization at all. Okay. I just make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Majors, any questions?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Phipps, for your willingness to serve. Us being able to populate this board, hopefully soon here again, is going to be a big thing for Harrisburg as we're continuing to move forward. One of the things you mentioned was, trying to improve community engagement as it pertains to the zoning here for. Could you give us some examples or some things that you think you in that position would be able to do to help increase the public engagement? Because that's something that I think we all want to see more of as stewards of our government.
One thing in sessions I sat through and I've gone and appeared in front of it or spoke, most of the time the public is there in an adversarial role with the exceptions that are being asked for. And I think sometimes they can be, but that information has to be put out. We need to communicate that out a lot more sooner. Okay, most of the developers and planners, they know what they're going to do. Okay, better salesmanship. Get out there if you really want the public to embrace your ideas, your community that you're going to affect. Get out there and let them know before time. Okay, but also give the public. Share plans with them. Have the developers share more information with the public. And again, don't put in legalese. I always had to think about contracts. When I see a lot of legalese on contracts, I got a red pen. I used to just mark it out. Talk to them as a regular person, common sense. Okay, you'll get their support. But they have to be informed. Okay, and I know we put out brochures, we put things on the website for information. We have a lot of neighborhood groups. Get on Chatty Cathy, get on that telephone and call them up and say, hey, look, you need to be involved in this. You need to at least read it and then follow up with them and make sure that they did follow through with it.
All right, thank you. No other questions at this time, Chair.
Thank you. Vice President Allen, any questions?
How do you view the relationship between the zoning board and city council? And what ways could you kind of either strengthen that or be a better reflection of what council priorities are?
The zoning board is, I call it the legal arm of city council, for making sure that the development or what's being proposed meets the requirements that it has to have. Okay, the zoning board, you work for city council. I this may get me in trouble. But you also work for the administration, but you really account to city council. Things coming from you and the planning board, they get vetted. They come to city council. You're their eyes and ears of the regulations or the proposals that are coming up. You have to basically vet that and present that information back to city council. No biases, and I hate to say that. And sometimes you can't have the biases. I'm looking at the two council members. I think that when I appeared in front of them at times, I strip the biases out, strip the personalities out. Like you said, you call balls and strikes at that point, but you make sure the city council is informed with the best knowledge that you have available to you. And you take administration, you take in consideration what their directions are. But again, it's a sales job. Okay, and sometimes you have to sell the administration.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. President Williams, any questions? Okay, thank you. Councilman Madsen?
Phipps?
Yes.
Thank you for your willingness to serve. You mentioned the comprehensive plan and you're very familiar with it. One thing I would like to see us do is use the comprehensive plan to amend the zoning code. Do you have any thoughts there or perspective on aspects of the plan that you like that we could adapt to the zoning code and maybe what you don't like, and what we shouldn't, but to adapt the zoning code?
When the plan first developed, it was supposed to be a bottom-up approach for the communities. And I look at Harrisburg, we're a city of communities. What's good in Allison Hill may not be good in Camp Curtin. Okay, each of the communities has their own flavor and their own, basically, communication style flavor and what they want to see happen in their community. That's how the comprehensive plan should have started and been brought up. One of the things I find that was deficient in current comprehensive plan is it didn't pay attention to transportation. A little story about Harrisburg. Why Harrisburg is, I call it the jewel in the crown. We're a transportation hub. Nothing used to move north, south, east, west, and now even in the air. It doesn't come through Harrisburg. So we have a lot of input and a lot of power in basically affecting how we serve our community. Okay, I think that was what was missing. I do like some of the things I said was work in progress. Okay, if we take the personalities out of it, it's a good starting block. I would love to see it come back in front of city council again. Okay, and basically stick to what it's supposed to do. Okay, some of the areas that modern cities you want to curtail to the younger population. What I didn't like about it is it made Harrisburg appear to be a transient city. You can't build communities if the population is transient, and that's my point of view. Okay, but again, you want home ownership, you want an investment, your investment. Okay, the funding sources, they have to back that vision and really embrace that vision. Sometimes they'll profit, sometimes they'll take a loss. That's the game they're in, and they have to be willing to do that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you. Councilwoman Green, any questions?
I feel like the questions I had were answered. I know you pretty well, Mr. Phipps, and I appreciate your willingness to serve. I suppose I'll ask the same question as before. What excites you? Although I feel like that we kind of got a little bit of an overview of that.
It is. What excites me, born and raised here, serving the city. Okay, and when I retired, I could have gone on to other types of employment opportunities. No, I want to give back to the city that gave me my start, that made me successful. Some of that city doesn't exist anymore, that we need to do something about that. But we need to do it in a way that's constructive and beneficial, okay? I heard a story that before 1960, we didn't have zone, all right, so we didn't have a zoning for construction stuff here. We didn't. And you can see that by when fires would happen to take a whole row of homes out, because there was no standard. So you have to have those minimum standards in place to guarantee that your community survives. Okay, and again, being of service back to this city. And I come about it from a different perspective than probably some people, because I've never served officially in a government. Okay, so I come in from the common man's approach, the community approach. Okay, always have my ear to that. Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, I'd like to ask that Resolution 84 of 2021 please be added to our legislative session agenda for December 14th. Thank you so much, Mr. Phipps.
Thank you. Thank you.
Houston, could you please read Resolution 85 of 2021 into the record?
Resolution 85 of 2021 is a resolution appointing Ms. Anna Bianco to serve on the zoning hearing board of the city of Harrisburg.
Thank you. Is Ms. Bianco present? I am. Hi, if you could please join us. Sure. Thank you.
Is it okay to sit here?
Sure, that's fine, as long as the microphone is on.
Is it?
I don't think so. Do you see a red light, a gray button?
A gray
Little higher,
button.
yes.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. If you could please take a few minutes to introduce yourself.
My name is Anna Bianco. I have been a city resident since June of 1985. I am not a native to the area. I come from Pittsburgh, and I have been in residential real estate for 44 years. I have served in the past for the city. I was on the Historical Architectural Review Board for probably a good 2 decades, I think, before I finally was able to transition off and kind of miss that excitement of knowing what is going on in the city and how what the people, the citizens want to do and what the laws are, how they mesh, and the importance of looking at it from all sides before making a decision. And probably the best thing we did was refer things up to the zoning hearing board. And now I would have the opportunity to be on the other end of that.
Well, thank you. I just have one question before I
Sure.
open it up to my colleagues. What impact do you believe that you would be able to bring to the zoning hearing board?
I am still actively involved in selling primarily residential real estate. And when people hear zoning, I think most times they think it's projects coming in, commercial aspects. But it's very important in the residential areas as well. And I think I have a good ability to communicate with people, both with council, with my fellow zoning board members, and the public when they come before us.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This time I will open the floor to my colleagues. I'll begin with Councilwoman Green. Any questions?
Just the same question. What excites you about being on the zoning hearing board?
I'll tell you, it's exciting just to have been asked to be here. You kind of take a break from things, and then when you're invited to join in again, it's like being the new kid on the block and being young again, for lack of a better analogy. I noticed the same thing with my involvement in the Greater Harrisburg Association of Realtors. I was very, very active in the beginning, and then you kind of step back to let other people come forward with their ideas. And now in the last 2 years, I have been asked to chair certain committees and appointed to committees, and it does your soul good, and to be able to know that you can contribute still.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Mattson, any questions?
First, thank you for your willingness to serve. So any thoughts, or what has been your experience with the zoning code as a private citizen? And any thoughts on what could be done to fix it?
Personally, I have not had any issues with the zoning code, not for myself or for clients that I work with. I'm really particular when I'm showing properties and writing contracts to make sure I know what the zoning is in whatever municipality the property is located, and that it meets the needs of my clients, and how to communicate with the zoning officials and if need be, request variances or exceptions. And it's important. I've also sold properties where there's virtually no zoning, and that's not a good thing. You kind of need a structure to keep everything in its proper place.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
You're welcome.
Thank you. President Williams, any questions?
No, I'm very familiar with Ann. As a matter of fact, I submitted her resume.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I concur with Mr. Mattson. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Vice President Allen, any questions?
It struck me when you were talking about serving realtor and working with residential. A lot of what comes through zoning is sometimes very commercially motivated, but in many cases leading to something residential. How do you think your expertise will play into kind of navigating that space?
I think knowing the residential market so well, and the residential mindset of buyers wanting to buy their first home or their forever home, and how the impact of commercial zoning would be if it were around them. And I think it's kind of a fine line. We definitely need commercial ventures, because without business, there would be no reason to have residents in the city. It has to work hand in hand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Majors, any questions?
Thank you. So you see you're still involved in residential real estate. Are you still,
Yes.
are you active in the city of Harrisburg?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'll defer to, yeah, you can go ahead because that's the question you normally ask. But again, but just glad that of your willingness to serve. And I know my colleague will ask some of the other questions that I know I had in mind. So thank you for your willingness to serve.
Just like to say that I am a big proponent of the city. In my business you'll hear people saying, well, you don't want to live there. But there's so many good reasons to live in the city of Harrisburg. And I'm a real champion of the city of Harrisburg, which is why I decided to buy a house here. Took a chance on Harrisburg back in 1985, and I'm very happy.
And thank you. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to my colleague.
Thank you. Councilwoman Daniels?
So basically the same question. What is the nature of the conflicts of interest you anticipate seeing as people come before you on the board?
I don't anticipate seeing any conflicts of interest. However, if there are, I would certainly recuse myself. You know, there might be, even if it was just a slight perception, if, say, something was coming before the zoning board that's a project of a fellow realtor, that sort of thing. But I would recuse myself. I served on at Governor Casey's pleasure on the Real Estate Commission, and there were several times because licensees that I knew well, that I worked with, that I had to recuse myself because if they succeeded in what they wanted, it would appear that it was because I was there and I helped. And if they didn't get what they were requesting, it might appear that maybe I didn't want them to, and I just wanted to have a real sense of fair play.
Over the years, do you have a sense of how many of your customers ended up coming before HARP?
Before the HARP?
Before zoning.
Before zoning? No, I had one client come before HARP, and it was to demolish a building in one of the historic districts. And I had to recuse myself there. So I don't anticipate it, but I'm sure that it may happen along the line.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate, again, your service.
You're welcome.
And your interest.
Thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Ms. Houston, if we could please add Resolution 85 of 2021 to our next legislative agenda on December 14th. Before we conclude the Building and Housing Committee, Mr. Hobbs has joined us. I'd like to revisit Resolution 80 of 2021.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. If you could please take a few minutes to introduce yourself to council and the residents.
Yes, my name is James Hobbs, of course, a current resident of the city, Midtown. I've been a resident since the fall of 2016. Been in Central PA for about almost 11 years, actually. So my main profession, I currently work as a cybersecurity consultant, where I basically help organizations with testing and assessing their software for vulnerabilities, Apart from that, I actually do a lot with real estate. So in 2016, I actually started investing in real estate here in the city, just as flipping houses and also acquiring rental properties. That led me to getting my real estate license in 2018. And I've been, been doing both since then. At this point, my, interest and involvement in real estate has actually grown to more, to really thinking about not just real estate in the transactional format, but also more so about housing and community development, which has led me to join forces with Elise Irvis to start Your New Home Accelerator, which will be launching in January, which is a program that is set on providing training, mentorship, resources like connecting them to financing, as well as a developers network to basically teach people how to acquire property and how to go through the whole process of renovating properties and, flipping them, renting them out if they decide to do that, and basically helping them from A to Z through that process. And really the point of it is to basically boost community development by giving opportunity to people that are already in place versus just leaning on developers that may come from outside to change the real estate landscape of the city. As well, also working on some other real estate initiatives that are more so focused on housing as a basis for basically building up and providing resources for individuals that may differ from what you normally see with a lot of, social welfare programs.
Thank you. One question before I open it up to my colleagues. What impact do you believe you will be able to bring to the zoning hearing board?
Yeah, so I think just being a resident and being involved not only with the things that I mentioned, but also being involved with a number of community-based initiatives, you do get more insight on the actual needs of the people, right? Which is all what we're here for. All these systems and positions that we have in place are really to serve the people in terms of operating the city. So I think that gives insight on how we may need to change things or the best way to implement certain policies or structures or procedures. And I think with that is also being able to step back and look how my certain role or certain piece of the pie plays into a larger system. And so I think of things, for instance, I think I had asked you about the Historic Architectural Review Board a couple of weeks ago. And just that as an example was to think of, we have these standards with the review board, right? And I understand the importance of historic preservation, but I don't think we can look at that in a siloed way. I don't think that's necessarily a fair or viable way to implement those things. And furthering the example, I give myself. So I moved into an old uptown district in 2016. And I didn't know that the historic district meant anything in terms of, the type of materials that I have to put in my house for certain repairs or certain upgrades. Didn't know there was a whole process to get approved for all those things, right? So then I go to start doing renovations on my property and find out that it has a financial impact. So, got my roof and gutters done, which is something normal, came out to about $17,000. Then I wanted to get my windows replaced, get a quote for vinyl windows for about $14,000. Then they, go to the review board, get feedback that doesn't meet the standard. So they have to use either wood or faux wood windows, which would increase the cost at least $100 per window. And realizing that that's not really a viable option for a lot of people. And so I think we can't look at certain things in a siloed manner. We have to look at how all the dots connect into a larger system. And so maybe there's a way to, even with that specific example, say, how can we make this more feasible so that we still have the element of historic preservation, but also make it a way for people that are moving in or people that are already in place can actually afford to maintain their homes.
Thank you. This time I'm going to open the floor to my colleagues. Any questions, Councilwoman Green?
Not too many questions, just the same one. What excites you about being on the board?
I like, number one, new opportunities, and I am a person of service. So I'm involved in a number of things in the community. Most recently, the thing that's taken most of my attention is serving on the board of the South Central PA Sickle Cell Council. So I always find a lot of opportunities to get into. And I've also, due to COVID, really have slowed down a little bit and have been able to focus on a lot of things more locally, and have just been involved with a number of conversations with a number of people and organizations. And it's helped me gain even more insight to some of the issues that really need to be addressed in our city. And I'm very much a person that's about, if you're going to talk about something, then you really have to follow up with action. And so this is, one of the ways in where I can put myself in action versus just being a person that stands on the sidelines. So that's where my excitement comes in.
Thank you. I appreciate your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Mattson, any questions?
Yeah, a few. Mr. Hobbs, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Thank you for your willingness to serve. My first question is, what has been your experience with zoning code and what would you improve?
So I think I haven't had a lot of experience dealing with zoning yet. I think hopefully I'll have some, be involved in certain projects where they may come into play. But I know when learning about this opportunity, I went and reviewed a few things just to see the current structure and policy and what the zoning rules were and the different zoning classifications. So that was interesting to learn. But I think kind of what I said earlier about having insight on some of the needs, right, and some of the deficiencies of what we currently have in place. I think in terms of changes, it's just really are the zoning codes reflecting the needs of the city in terms of opportunities, so both, on the commercial or residential side, and meeting whatever needs we see, right? So if we're talking about safety, economic development, if we're talking about the housing issue itself, there's so many different categories that we can, connect to zoning. So just ensuring that those really reflect the basic needs that are not really being met here in the city.
Thank you for that. And I know you're familiar with the comprehensive plan, you're involved with some discussions there. What part of the plan would you like to see adapted to the zoning code? And then what part of the plan that you don't like that you don't think would?
Well, there's a number of things in the comprehensive plan, right? So I think the kind of generalize it is in the comprehensive plan, one thing I noticed is there are a lot of good data points, right? There's a lot of statistics that are very interesting and kind of shed light on certain things here in the city. But what I saw in terms of the outcomes or objectives that supposedly stem from those data points is that I really didn't see a lot of action items that would really make any pivotal or foundational change to really address the issues. So if you have the data, but you don't really put anything into place to address the issues or to change the data, then what you have is really not, I guess, that effective in terms of being a plan that really shapes what we want to see in the future of the city.
Thank you for that. That's it for my questions.
Okay, thank you. President Williams, any questions?
Well, I did, but I think Mr. Mattson asked that question because he spoke about changes with the historical. And I wanted, you mentioned about changes. I wanted to know what type of changes would you like to incorporate in the zoning?
Yeah,
Are there
so
changes that you would like to see from the zoning board?
Mhm. Well, I think one of the things that I noticed is this is one example, right? There's a lot of a lot of interest that people have, right, on I think both residential and commercial side to use older buildings, right? And so we know there's certain, because of older architecture, older standards, right, there's certain issues that people are going to face trying to make certain match a certain format if it's so old, or if there's materials that have to be updated, if there's certain other changes or alterations that have to be made to it. So if we could find a way where, just evaluating individual rules and saying, hey, does this really make sense to make this a stringent rule, or is this something that we can modify to make it a little bit easier for people to get into the opportunities, by changing that specific rule, whatever it may be.
Thank you. Vice President Allen, any questions?
I know, Dave, you covered the question I was thinking about. So thank you for your willingness to serve. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Majors, any questions?
Yes. So again, thank you for your willingness to come before us and willingness to serve our community. So, how do you view your role how would you view your role as a member of the zoning hearing board? We're talking a lot about a few different things, but what do you think your role would be on that board?
Right. So I think, the basic role is to ensure that, projects or proposals that come our way after coming through the planning committee, that, we basically verify that everything is in order in terms of matching up with the policies and structure that is in place based off of the zoning classification. So that to me is the primary role. But as I mentioned, kind of the way I look at things is I think also if there's something that I see that is a deficiency or that maybe could be placed better or maybe just needs to be modified to be more current with the times, then to me, my job is also to make suggestions, based off of those things and present those to the council.
All right. Thank you. And I guess, could you expound upon some of the changes? I think we've talked a lot about in generalities. Are there one or two specific things that you would want to see change in
Specific for zoning.
To zoning.
I actually don't have any specific one right now. There's some interesting things I saw in the zoning codes, but I don't have any particular one that I think necessarily right now needs to be changed. But I think there's probably a couple that could be, points of discussion.
Okay. And then in terms of how you've been interacting with the community, similar to the question I asked Mr. Phipps, how do you think you could get the community to be a little bit more engaged with the zoning hearing board? And do you have any suggestions on trying to improve community engagement with the board?
Yes, great question. I think community engagement is such a powerful tool when it's used correctly. So a number of things. I think, when you have a certain team of people that are responsible for reaching out to the masses, right, to entire city population, it is difficult task to get in touch with everyone, right, and get everyone engaged. But I think number one, you have to find a way to meet people where they are. And what I mean by that is finding out the best way to communicate with them, and then plan and implement your communication strategy based off of that. So for instance, we have a number of people that may not be able to attend meetings, that certain things may be still relevant to them. So like if you're in some type of nursing facility or some type of similar type of facility where you may not have access to come to a meeting in person, or how do you get the word? How do you get the information? So that's one example. I think also is utilizing all the tools and resources that you have available. So we have a lot of technology that we can use to address communication issues, right? Not only so people can see us on video, but also to do things like polling, to ask questions in a live format, based off of the conversation or topic that's being discussed. So finding ways to do that. And also being able to pull that data in to basically pull data points, statistics based off the responses that you're getting. And I think also it is the communication in terms of timeline. So I know when I see a lot of the notices, it's like a week before the meeting. And, if you're a busy person, a lot of times your schedule is booked up weeks out. So it's hard to just say, oh, well, I just found out about this meeting, so now I'm going to put it on my calendar. I think there needs to be a better job of ahead of time, giving, possibly multiple weeks before you're actually holding a meeting. So people that are involved or affected by the particular proposal that's being brought forward, can come in and give their voice to whatever the project is.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Councilwoman Daniels?
So you mentioned you have, what kind of business was it? Was it real estate or development or?
The accelerator? I think that's what you're talking about. What I was talking about, the investment training?
So you have the accelerator, but you also had, I thought you said you had started investing in properties.
Yes, I do that.
So what kind of?
So this just residential investment. So acquiring residential properties either to flip, which buy and renovate and sell, or to keep them as rental properties.
And so about how many?
Right now, I just have two rental properties here in the city.
In the city,
Yes.
And do you anticipate acquiring more
Yes.
within the city?
Yes, I do.
Do you see yourself having to interact with the zoning board in matters related to the properties that you own?
Right,
Or
for-
will eventually own?
Right. For residential investment, I don't see a lot. Most of the projects that I acquire are not heavy on things that need like major changes or restructuring to property. So most of it is like cosmetic renovations. So most of the time I don't have that issue, even when flipping properties. I think if I were to get more into commercial development, that may come into play a little bit more. And so in terms of talking about conflict of interest, I think, it would be a little bit more direct and obvious if there would be a conflict of interest, because it would be something that I'm working on myself or connected to.
And you would be the applicant at that point?
Right. At that point, I would be the applicant. Yeah.
That's it. Thank you for
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, I'd like to ask again that Resolution 80 of 2021 be added to the legislative session agenda for December 14th. Thank you so much for being here and for.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. This concludes the work of the Building and Housing Committee.
Chairwoman Bowers, there is a housekeeping matter
Okay.
for these appointments. the appointments all come under the Planning and Zoning Code, section 7-3234, which has 2 requirements. And they come into play more tonight than usual because all 3 seats are vacant. They're 3-year term appointments, but they're staggered. So the council has choices that it can make on how to handle that tonight. But if you made no decision, what would happen is the first one of these seats would go back to the appointment timeline. Is the one of them would be over next July already. So the council could, because it's staggered from the original appointments, because they're all vacant, the council could decide, it doesn't have to decide tonight, but it should before it votes, how you want to stagger them and whether you want them then to be from your vote on the 14th. So at least someone has the minimum's a full year of service on the board. And it's not an issue that comes up very often, but because all the vacancies are there, it's sort of back to the original timeframe that you can create for when these appointments happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the work of the Building and Housing Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. And I would also like to say thank you to all the candidates for taking time out of your busy schedule this evening to come before council. And as well, thank you for your willingness to serve. We're moving on now to the Public Works Committee. I will turn it now over to Committee Chair, Mr. Majors.
Thank you, President Williams. Before the Public Works Committee, we have one bill this evening. It is Bill 16 of 2021. Ms. Houston, would you mind reading that into the record?
Bill 16 of 2021 is an ordinance to technically amend the Municipal Waste Recycling and Composting Code of Title IX of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Harrisburg.
All right, thank you. We have Mr. Nave. Would you mind proceeding to give us a brief overview of the amendment?
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Councilman Majors and City Council. So you may remember in 2018, the municipal waste and recycling and composting ordinances were updated with the city. Recently, and I should say, one of the changes that was made was to indicate specifically that the Director of Public Works would have the authority to promulgate certain rules and regulations such as days of collection, pickup routes, things like that. And then those specific details about the city's waste and recycling program were then moved to the Municipal Waste Recycling and Composting Codes Rules and Regulations document. So some of those things are no longer specifically spelled out in the city's ordinances. Recently, upon review with the grant manager and a member of DEP, it was determined that there are a few things that are missing from the city's ordinances and that by themselves, without the additional public Department of Public Works document, that they're no longer Act 101 compliant. So that's the law from the state of Pennsylvania that requires recycling for municipalities. So this is a technical amendment to reintroduce the minimum required language to ensure that the city's ordinances remain compliant with Act 101. Specifically, there were a few changes, one of which being that the ordinances did indicate that source separation of recycled material was required for all residential, commercial, and institutional establishments, but it did not say also that it was required for community activities and events. And that is one of the requirements of Act 101. Also, there's a minimum requirement for the list of recyclable materials. So that has been added back in to ensure that we have some of the required source separated recyclable materials. And then specifically, it indicated that any material designated as recyclable or yard waste had to be source separated, but it didn't explicitly say that any source separated material shall not be disposed of as municipal waste. So that has been added back in as well.
Okay, thank you. I will open it up to questions from my colleagues. I'm glad we are working to ensure that we're going to be in compliance with the regulation. So I will start to my right, Councilperson Daniels.
Sure. So could you go over again the DPW, the Public Works Directors Authority? Because in the ordinance I have, it looks like that's the full change, but you're saying that it was already there. And so why does it look like that's being kind of added?
No. If you're referring to the 9-301.4 authority section, I didn't make any changes to that.
9-305.5.
3 of 5.
995.
9-305.5.
Yeah. So that looks like that's the amendment.
Oh,
But you're
yeah.
saying like
So
that-
that particular piece was, one of the requirements is that the city's recycling education and information has to be provided to all residential and commercial establishments at least biannually. So that paragraph was to reintroduce that section, that piece.
Okay, so the only change is the second sentence.
Yes.
And the first part was already there.
Yeah. Well, the first part was already mentioned in that previous section that I referred to, the 309-301.4.
It appears in the existing ordinance in several places. Like if you look just above the 305.3, that second sentence talks about the director promulgating rules and regulations with respect to other specific matters. The law bureau review was simply this is tying to what a DEP preference is, and it came up directly related to the grant application. So they would like more specific language in the act. So we've drafted as they've requested.
So that amendment then is just really a kind of a communications amendment more than an authority amendment.
That's right. The authority was already there. This is telling them that biannually we will comply with giving public notice on the recycling programs commercially and residentially.
That's it for me. Thank you.
In addition to just to that, it looks like, and that they want that in each section of the rules, right? So we have it under our recycling, under compost, and under waste. So I think it's just, just that cleanup language to ensure that under each section that we are in compliance with Act 101 regulations.
They felt it left open a question. So, and we did not want to place grants in any kind of question in jeopardy. So we added the technical request. So.
Yeah. So again, all right, good. Councilperson Allen.
I don't have any questions on this. Thank you.
President Williams. Councilperson Madsen.
No questions for me. Thank you.
Councilperson Green.
I don't have any questions on this. Thank you.
And Councilperson Bowers.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nate, for that and ensuring that we'll be in compliance for any grants that we look for in the future. And seeing no further questions, we would add Bill 16 to our next legislative session. And that concludes the work of the Public Works Committee for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Majors. Now we move on to Budget and Finance Committee. I'll now turn it over to Mr. Allen.
Thank you. I'm going to read two things a little out of order here, but Sharon, can you read into Bill 18 and Bill 19 into record? I'm going to discuss them together.
Okay. Bill 18 of 2021 is an ordinance establishing the budget for the municipal government of the city of Harrisburg for the year 2022. And Bill 19 of 2021 is an ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the city of Harrisburg, Title 5, Licensing and Taxation, Part 5, Real Estate Taxes, Chapter 5-501, Property Tax by establishing for the year 2022 tax levy on land and improvements and providing for the distribution of taxes levied and assessed and providing for a tax rebate for the difference between the tax due and attributable to the year 2022 tax levy over the tax due and attributable to the year 2006 tax levy for qualifying senior citizens.
Thank you. I wanted to read those in the record. Usually we have about 8 hours of budget hearings to discuss this budget, but we're not doing that this year. And that is because this is largely a formality to make sure that the city can continue doing business as we prepare for a new mayoral administration. So early in January, the new mayor, right here, will introduce a budget to the new council, most of which will be right here, except for the two of us, and then open up for an actual 2022 budget. So I say that just more kind of procedurally. This is going to be what it is. We don't need to change it because you will make changes to it. We're just doing this to make sure we can carry forward and pay our bills and pay salaries and do those things in the early part of January. Neil, is there anything you want to add to this, just from a council perspective?
I do, just so everyone's aware, technically under the union contracts, there are raises that come in, particularly for fire in January. Some come in later in January for a few police officers, because that's based on when they became a police officer. I had spoken to the presidents of both unions, making sure that they understood we weren't trying to not honor those obligations, but these are sort of placeholder amounts. And so it's February 15th would be the new budget deadline. And you will most likely then have to go backwards to do that. There will be decisions that have to be made, because technically come January 1, you will have a budget with some people having different salaries right now. And as long as council and the mayor's office are in agreement, they could continue at the current rate, but technically that's not the rate in this budget. So those are sort of housekeeping matters, but I think the intent of everyone is clear. You know, we have obligations we have to honor, the fiduciary in nature under these contracts. But this is a placeholder where we will have an awkward few weeks where, you know, compliance will be hard to get under our belt as we transition. So,
Which is a standard practice in any changes in administration.
Absolutely. So,
are there any questions from my colleagues on this, starting down to my left, Councilmember Bowers?
No, thank you for the housekeeping notes, and thank you just for sharing, just for context.
Councilmember Green,
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Mattson.
No questions for me, thank you.
I guess maybe I'd allow a question from you, but I'm not sure it's necessary. You've got some work to do, Madam President, soon to be Mayor.
Well, no questions. Question to Neil is that at this point, why would there be approval of employees who were given raises effective November the 22nd of this year? If the mayor knew that we were not going to do a budget, if he knew he was not going to do a budget.
I can't answer that question, Madam President.
So you didn't know about that either?
I had recently heard there were some raises that came into effect, and I have not seen any document on that yet, so.
And I honestly think we might need to see a list of that, and then that's something that the next mayor is going to have to address right away.
But those would not be the only ones throughout the year that are just not lined up with the budget.
There's other contractual ones that will occur because the budget needs to be passed.
And some of the new directors, because there was money left in the line item for salaries, their salary is higher than the original one voted on a year ago.
It's understandable, but I don't think 4 or 5 employees should be given a raise increase until we see what actuality the budget was going to be.
Right, and contractually, budget, we're only allowed to say what the budget says, so we haven't amended that.
If we're talking about the same thing, just so we're clear.
Yeah.
I believe you're talking about raises that happened in a department that is federally funded, that is not in this budget. Salaries are not in this budget, so they're up to the mayor. It'll be up to you, Madam President, when you become mayor. But, you know, there's always been a question of whether the federal positions belong inside the budget or not. And that's sort of been a perennial debate in the city.
Okay, but my concern is that, you know, that's federally funded with a grant. So when's the end of the grant, and when's the grant period ended? And will it affect January 1st, where the monies may not be available?
Federal grant was October 1.
You're right, it's October 1, and there's a percentage that is fixed.
But we don't know, because what happened, see, keep in mind that we did not expend the money. So that's another question.
You're going to have a number of questions on the federal money. It is my understanding, just so for the public's sake, it's not that money is being expended that isn't there and is not available to the city. It's that there's normally a 5-year window for administrative related expenses under each of the annual budget allocations from HUD. And, you know, we wrap all those together, then we start wrapping in the other federal money that's sitting there that's not allocated yet. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made.
And I think that brings up a good question for the next council administration to make a determination on is how we account for those federal monies and how it translates in salary, because it does not sit in the budget as it stands. So that's something that would be a good discussion to have going forward, just for a point of record, so those types of things don't happen kind of in the dark. But that's good. It's a good discussion to have.
Thank you, Neil.
Councilmember Majors.
No questions as it pertains to this budget, but I think the larger point regarding getting a list of all of the, I guess, management raises that had occurred at that point, as well as, we always talk about when we're talking about CDBG funds, how we have a cap of 15% of how, what can be used on admin costs. And there are a lot of projects in the city of Harrisburg that we don't always have to necessarily go to the cap. So I think that's a larger discussion for next council on how we have that balance with our CDBG funds moving forward. But as it pertains to this budget, if we can still get a list of any management raises that occurred, so that we know what we're looking at in terms of as we get into 2022. That'd be great.
We'll forward the budget. I think the easiest way to do it may be to simply get a list of the current salaries.
Right.
And then compare that to the current budget.
Well, I did look at the current salaries. I don't think there's any raises in management just in that area, that particular area. But like I said, my concerns because of the fact, as Mr. Majors mentioned, there's only a certain percentage that you can utilize with that grant from the federal government and DBH.
But
I'm aware there are raises.
There are raises.
No, I looked, there's only one, and I think that was a back pay. And there's the working out of classes one. It's the only one I see.
Then your list is inaccurate.
Okay, then I do have an inaccurate list. Okay.
There are
So
several.
I need an updated list.
I will make sure you get it.
Yeah, we get that updated list. I'm aware.
Okay.
I'm aware of a few, particularly in departments that I've in the public works and a few other places.
I need an updated list tomorrow.
We will get an
Thank you.
updated list.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Daniels.
Yeah, so for my edification, what happens on the CBA raises, is there a pause to grievances in that process as we navigate this, or are employees able to file grievances and then they're resolved once a new budget is passed, or how does it work?
Until I see the specifics, I don't know if any of them were union members.
They're not. They're all management.
They're all management. So the grant managers don't really have a grievance process.
That's it for me. Thank you.
So we will move this forward to vote for next week's legislative session. Now we'll move to Resolution 82 of 2021. Cheyenne, will you read that into record?
I'm sorry, you said Resolution 82? Resolution 82 of 2021 is a resolution ratifying and approving the 2022 to 2025 basic labor agreement between the City of Harrisburg and Local 521, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, District Council 90.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening.
How are you?
Hi, Jack Dean. I probably saw you a year ago or a year and a half ago. And as I always say, it's always a pleasure to be here for two reasons. One, it's always the holiday season. And two, it means that a union has ratified a contract after negotiations, and I'm to go over a term sheet with you. So I know council has the term sheet. What I'll do is go over the highlights of it and answer any questions that you may have. The highlights of this one, it's the Afscme contract with the employees for the city of Harrisburg. We negotiated it over the course of July through September of this year. I took a little while to get it in format because it's a large contract and there was a lot of cleanup of language that we were working on the last couple of months. The union has ratified it. It's a 4-year deal, which will give stability with Afscme for the next 4 years. If you recall, last year we had a 1-year extension with them with a minimal raise of 1%. The prior contract was 2 years. They had 1% raise. And I think there was 1 year we gave them $1,000 bonus. So their raises were minimal over the last 4 years. The highlights of this contract are going through the term sheet. The membership and dues deduction language, just so you're aware, that's language cleanup based on the Supreme Court Janus decision, which eliminated the fair share language. So we took that out of the contract since it's no longer legal. There was also some language cleanup to bring us into the electronic age of how we notify people of union activities. There are no longer, Article 5, there's no longer 7-day operations within the city, so that was cleaned up all out of the contract. Any reference to 7 hours was cleaned up, as well as just as far as miscellaneous stuff. We went from Roman numerals to numbers to again bring us into the year 2021. Probationary employees, Article 13, they were previously allowed to accrue sick leave or accrue leave after 15 days. We bumped that back to 30. So if somebody's here 15 days, they're not going to take some time off. So apparently that might have been a problem. So we moved it back to 30. The union agreed to that. The union also requested, and we agreed, when sick leave is bought back, which is part of the contract, it's bought back at the current rate of pay. How the contract was previously worded, if I earn a sick day in 2019 and it comes time to buy it back whenever that day occurs, you got to go back and look at what I was making in 2019 and do it at that rate. One, it was an accounting nightmare. And the fair way to do it is when it's time to buy it back, it's buy it back at your current rate of pay. That is a benefit to the employee. They'll get more buyback, but it relieves us all that accounting nightmare time. It was, I understand it was a real problem. Probably the most important thing you're interested in is compensation. And I want to preface this is that as the labor attorney, I make no offers on compensation unless it's run through the finance office. So any offer that I make, I assure you that I was told by finance we could afford it. And any final contract, I was assured by finance we can afford it. The compensation package they agreed to and we're bringing to council is for the 4-year deal, 3% a year. So it's a total of 12%. Again, remember, these employees did not receive, they received minimal raises over the financial difficulties we've had over the last 10 years. However, we have money that we have available to pay them bonuses, according to finance. And that number, which we agreed to, is first year is $3,000, second year is $1,500, and the third and fourth year is $1,000 each year. Hearing the discussion a few moments ago, obviously these raises and these bonuses will not be paid until you adopt the budget in January or February, whenever your time is. And I know I had a brief a brief discussion beforehand with Council Chairman Williams, and I was mistaken because I thought it was going to be paid in January, not realizing. I mean, I knew there was a change of administration. I just didn't realize it impacted the budget that way, and that was my fault. But they'll be paid as soon as practical after the budget is adopted. That is less than the union originally wanted to negotiate as far as percentage. It's comparable with the original bonus they wanted. So it gives a fair deal to these employees who worked through a pandemic and didn't get much raises over the last several years. Most of the rest of it is language cleanup. There is some economic effects, though. I mean, for example, this overtime, overtime's supposed to be equalized, but we never had a number. So that leads to Jack Dean got 2 hours more overtime than Neil Grover, and Neil's filing a grievance. Well, the union agreed to equalization means within 12 hours. So we have a hard and fast number. So our management of this unit is going to have to keep overtime within 12 hours of each employee to make sure to avoid a grievance. So it gives us some clarity on that.
Could you repeat that, sorry?
Sure. So overtime has to be equalized among employees. So if I'm your supervisor and I happen to like you, and I say, you get all this overtime, and Councilman Majors, he likes the Phillies, I like the Mets, he's not getting any. Actually, I like the Phillies, maybe you like it. But anyway, it was unclear as to what equalization meant. So now we have a hard and fast number that if your overtime is within 12 hours of Councilman Majors, that's equalized. So you have no grievance. If it's not, you get 15 hours more, then he has a grievance, and we could possibly lose that. He'll get that overtime. We did make some slight changes in shift differential. for the overnight shift, if the employees are coming out and working between 8 p.m. and 3:59 a.m., and you may ask why 3:59 a.m., and the reason is 4 a.m. is a start shift. So we're not giving shift differential when they start their regular shift. The shift differential, again, is between 8 p.m. and 3:59 a.m. We did bump it from 85 cents to $1.25. Again, all offers were cleared through finance, just so you know. Some concessions the union gave was on call-in pay. If we got called in to fix a tree that's get a tree off the road, and you were there for 20 minutes, you got 4 hours. Now you get 3 hours, and when you're called in prior to your shift, one, you work the entire shift if you want to, and two is that we could direct you to do other work. So if you're out for that call in for 3 hours and it only takes you 20 minutes, at our discretion, the employer's discretion, he could say, wait a second, maybe there's a drainage facility that needs to be cleaned. Let's go do that. So you're actually going to work the 3 hours versus the call-in pay. Medical and hospital benefits, the only change to our medical plan we made, it's not really a change to the medical plan, was retirees right now, when they hit Medicare eligible age, they go on Medicare and we would reimburse them for a supplement. The supplement reimbursement traditionally increased 10 years per the contract, $10 a year for the contract. We agreed to do that again, but stop it at the 2025 rates, which is the end of the contract. So it'll have to be renegotiated in 2025. So it will be capped at the monthly reimbursement for your Medicare supplement will be $340 in 2025. Take a $10 back each way to whatever that comes to today, maybe $300. Seniority. This was an exchange. The union wanted to increase their probationary salary to 100%. Not going to tell you our negotiation strategy because we're in public, but we exchanged increasing it to 100%, and the reasoning behind it to help attract new employees in exchange for extending the probationary period to 9 months. So new employees, while they'll make the full salary, their probation is extended to 9 months as opposed to 6. So if we get somebody that is not up to our standards, we have an extra 3 months to look at. One other provision we put in, it's a brand new provision. We put it in the police. For those of you who were on council a couple of years ago, we put it on. We want to make sure when an employee comes and it's a good employee, we could have an incentive to retain that employee, an incentive for that employee to stay with the city of Harrisburg. And that is called an onboarding provision. What we try to avoid is new employees coming on, getting trained by us, going to classes, and then saying, see ya, I'm going across the river somewhere else. The incentive is that in the first 5 years, if they do that, they're going to have to reimburse us for their training up to a maximum of $5,000. So it's not I'm not throwing $5,000 around like it's a nickel, but it is not. It's a significant number, but it's something that an employee would have to think about before he moved for $1,000 raise. Just posting vacancies. We're just identifying where vacancies posted. It's a light language cleanup. Miscellaneous provisions. The union wanted to have knowledge and input in our responses to all the right to know requests we get. That was a little broad, so we went back and forth on this for a while, and we said, we'll give you notice if there is a right to know request that comes in requesting your unions, not the fire, not police, your union's personal information. We're getting a lot of those. If you guys are familiar with the right to know, I'm not sure which one you are, the right to know liaison. You get a lot of these, and this at least gives them the opportunity to know what's going on. They don't have input. They can't say don't respond. We comply with the right to know law. We don't give out personal information. We don't give out social security numbers, cell phones, things like that. but at least they'll know somebody's out there looking. Usually this is another union coming in or maybe an anti-union person coming in, group coming in. I see them all the time. Yeah, sure.
A little bit of experience with this. The reason usually groups want to do that is so they can solicit mail to union members to get them to drop out.
Right, yeah.
The tactic often used by
Right, so that was
organization.
Right, that was a request from Afscme, not necessarily the rank and file. And we're fine with giving them notification, then they could do whatever they want. We have a clothing allowance in the contract of $500 a year. That's in there. It wasn't increased. It was only for parking enforcement officers. We added animal control officers in there too because their uniforms required. So that is an add to the contract. We extended the rule of 85. It's already in place, age plus years of service. Well, actually, rule of 80. I'm sorry, it was 85. Rule of 80 is in place. We just extended it to the end of this contract. Language cleanup. We got rid of the water and sewer employees provision because it's no longer applicable. There was some language in there regarding that. We added a military buyback provision to the contract. So you know, military buyback is the city of Harrisburg's policy, but it was not in the contract. So we took it verbatim, cleaned it up, made sure it's applicable to Afscme, and put it in the contract. And military buyback, they're allowed to buy back up to 5 years of military service. They have to notify the city within 90 days of hire, I believe. And I think that is it. So it was, again, a very productive, it was very amicable. We felt both sides came across, there was a lot of give and take, very professional, especially from the union side. We met 3 times, and the final decision came down to whether we could afford it through finance. And we had many discussions in executive session with finance prior to making this final offer that the union agreed to. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I will open up to questions from my right with Councilmember Daniels first.
Sure, so just to be certain, so the bonuses do not go into pension calculations, it's just salaries.
That's correct, correct.
And can you give me examples of the trainings that we do that we would want to be reimbursed for? Because I would think most of the trainings are like licensing.
Licensing, yes.
You know, there are few positions, and this was triggered by a specific incident where we have a few positions that require additional certification and training, and we pay third parties to do it. And it takes a while to get there. And what happens is we've had people get that certification and walk out the door where the city has expended its budget in the department for the year on training, and now the person is gone 3 weeks later. So it really was looking at some very specialized positions. And there was some discussions and negotiations that may come back in labor management about specialized positions. There's other issues with them as well, but they're harder and harder to keep and retain. And if we want to keep them as city employees, something probably has to change over time, because it's very hard now to compete with the private sector and the other jobs that are out there with the same specializations.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's already ratified, but I don't really care for the money back if it's just annual licensing fees.
So it's classes and trainings to get to qualify for a higher position than you're in, where you would have to go to class and we pay for it out of pocket. For you to go to on the clock, we pay extra money for the tuition. We send you there, and there's only a few positions that happens.
And it's clear that it's those few positions.
Right, and they're the only ones. It's that we have to spend hard dollars out of the city's coffers. It's not the training you would do or this annual fee for your licensing. It's hard dollars to train you. That was the discussion.
Okay. And then, do you know what the makeup of the collective bargaining unit is gender-wise?
I have no idea. I mean, I just know who I negotiated with.
But the reason I asked that is because one of the things that happened during the last change in healthcare benefits was that actually doulas were taken out of the new health insurance plan. So women or adversely affected by that negotiation. So I know everything is ratified already and but
Well, we didn't change any healthcare, so.
we went from Highmark to Capital.
Yeah, but not in our negotiations.
So right now doulas aren't covered.
Right, not, so we didn't adjust anything in the negotiations.
Yeah,
So there's.
right.
If council, or the city, I shouldn't say council, if the city switched from Highmark to Geisinger or wherever, that's different, that's outside of this, so. And so, and I apologize, I don't know the gender makeup, I just know.
Yeah, it's just something, it's just an important benefit because we do know that maternal mortality rate for women of color is really high, and having doulas is important in reducing that. And that was one of the things that got lost in between the shift. But that's just I just wanted to get a sense of how many women were impacted by that in the unit. And I think that's it for me.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Majors.
Thank you. Not too many questions. Thank you for your thorough explanation of all the term sheet and the differences in the contract. One question just for clarification for me. So at the beginning of the term sheet, it was Article 5 about the hours of work. It says it deleted as it deals with 7-day operations, but I thought you were mentioning the hours. So is it 7-day work week or is it?
It's 7-day employees.
Okay.
There was actually, and it came up when we first brought this up to clean, that was our idea to clean the language up. And actually it did come up that there was one person in Treasury, and I don't think you were involved in this deal, one person in Treasury who was a 7-hour employee, and they made everybody 8 hours. So that's the 7-hour employees, 7 hours, 7.5.
I think it's the 7-day week, and it's going to be an issue we clarify with Afscme in that discussion.
Right, and you're right. Now,
I get the 7 and 7.5 hours and clearing all that up. I was talking specifically about the 7-day operation.
There are no longer 7-day operations in this unit, according to both the unit and administration.
No, well, this is where I said we're going to clarification. There is a 7-day operation. It's just that people work 5 days on it. And so the only thing that has historically affected is when is your holiday and when is your holiday pay. So if your normal shift is Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the following holiday falls on a Saturday, do you get no benefit or do you get a benefit? And HR has produced a couple of schedules related to that. And we have to go back and talk to Afscme on that. The intention was to eliminate the 7-day a week provision from way back when, because it wasn't being used, and the two have sort of gotten conflated in the discussion, which HR pointed out to me very clearly.
Okay, yeah, no, that was outside of your thorough explanation. That was in one of the things that I want to get some clarification on. So
that was a good point because I actually interposed it myself.
Yep, no problem. But other than that, explanation was very thorough. And thank you. No other questions at this time.
Thank you, Council President.
Is there a cap on how many 16 days you're going to pay?
It hasn't changed. We didn't negotiate that.
Well, that's what I wanted to know.
Well, no, we didn't change it. Do you want the number?
Yes.
It's 60 days at the end of each count. It's Article 13, Section 2. At the conclusion of each calendar year, any employee whose personal sick leave bank contains more than 60 days of leave may sell back to the city any unused days from that calendar year up to a maximum of 12 days.
So we're allowing them to have a bank of 60 days.
And have for quite a long time.
Yep. That was not changed.
How many bargaining employees are we talking
in this unit, Neil?
I've lost track of the unit. We are now getting down to that weird portion where the members are getting fewer and fewer, but the collective bargaining numbers stay high, the unit number. So, but HR can get you that question.
I just need to know the idea when you already ratified a contract. You're talking about January 1st, 2000 per person. Just wanted the idea how much that.
Yeah, the number, again, please don't hold me to it, we'll verify it. It was, I want to say in the hundreds, not 200, but 100 and something, if I'm not mistaken.
The finance director gave you that information
The finance director gave me the
for
information.
the whole period, from the
Yes.
expiration to 2025.
Yes,
And I can request that.
yes.
So another question. They were willing to go 9 months probationary period?
Yes,
So that they could get an additional 15%
right.
and
And
100% pay.
right, and we were okay with the 100% for attracting employees. That was our thoughts anyway.
And the fire and police each have a year, I believe, for their probation.
Pardon me?
The fire and police each have a full year for their probation.
Section 5. So you added animal control officers.
Yes.
They were paying for their own uniforms out of their own pocket.
Well, we weren't paying for them. So I'm assuming they were paying.
The city was.
Right, the city was not. And if the city was, for some reason, it wasn't in the CBA, and that could have been a problem.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Mattson.
A specific question. I know believe we've talked about this with management employees about doing exit interviews. Is that something that we could potentially do for rank and file employees just for future negotiations? We sort of know why people are leaving the city prematurely.
Yeah, I actually am a big fan of exit interviews. I don't think they need to be in a CBA. I think it just, if somebody gives you your notice, you do an interview and ask why you're leaving. They could be honest or they can't be honest, but I'm a big fan of that because it gives you an idea why they're leaving. I'm with the school district and we lost about 3, 4 or 5 teachers up in Schuylkill County in one district. And we did exit interviews. The board thought they're leaving because they didn't like the administration. They're actually leaving for various reasons, including my husband got a job in Pittsburgh. I got a teaching job in Pittsburgh. I want to go move to Philadelphia to care for my elderly mother. So it wasn't what we thought it was. So I'm a big fan of those. I would encourage administration to do them. I mean, they could be a pain, especially with a large employer like the city of Harrisburg, but I think they're important for guidance for the future.
I agree.
I don't think it's a CBA issue, though. I think it's just more of a matter.
Yeah, I didn't think that it was, but maybe the future administration. Okay.
Now, of course, you better do it before they leave, otherwise you never get it.
That was it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Green.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. I think they've been answered.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bowers.
Thank you for your review of the term sheet. I just wanted to sort of follow up on a question that Councilwoman Daniels asked. And I don't know if you have the answer because you mentioned, I was just curious if you were aware of the diverse makeup of the collective bargaining board or committee.
Well, of the committee that I interviewed with, or not interviewed, the committee we negotiated with, it varied in size at times, ranging from 5 to 7 people. None of them, nobody on the negotiating team that I recall was a woman. I do know that Ernestine Kirst, who was the lead negotiator for Afscme, not a union member, she was, yeah, obviously a female. And as far as any more specifics on diversity, are you looking for, I do know there was one gentleman who was originally from northeastern Pennsylvania, so he and I spoke in the same accent. But other than that, they were all Harrisburg guys.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on this this bill?
Yeah, just
Resolution,
one,
I'm sorry.
yeah, sorry, one question, and I guess it's probably for finance, and I don't know, Neil, if you can take this back. So we're not sure of the unit size, which employee, what,
We have exact numbers. I just don't
okay,
know.
okay, all right. So if we can get the unit size, and then what departments are these folks in in terms of this Afscme contract, since we have several different
Right.
units. So which departments do these folks that are a part of this contract fall under?
I think they're in every department, including police, other than fire doesn't have anyone that's AFSCME.
Okay.
They're in the controller's office, they're in the treasurer's office. I'm trying to think if there's any office that is all management, but I don't think there is.
Okay, so
The
it's
mayor's
just
office.
across the board, everybody in that unit.
Every non-uniform.
Okay, every non-uniform.
Every non-uniform person.
All right, thank you. And then in terms of for finance, did they know where the funds were coming from to make these raises? So which is, in terms of straight dollars, it's $6,500 over 4 years plus the 12% step increases. Did they clarify to?
So I don't think that got that far. The idea was, the revenues as projected and fund balance, those are decisions that get made out of a mayoral budget every year. Where do they come from? I mean, so.
How do you get that number when you do a budget?
And then, and this was, the negotiations finalized in what month?
September is when we finalized the final back and forth, September 27th to be exact. By the time Afscme redlined a document, and we had some real technical issues from their end redlining it, because what they did was take a PDF and redline it. So if you know what happens when that happens. So we then had to go through, Isaac did it here, Mr. Gaylord, we did it in our office to go through and write a 4-page single line typographical error memo to fix it with either a numbers instead of a letter. There's a misspelling, and when you do the PDF, it comes up jumbled sometimes. So it was a very, very tedious thing to do, but that's why it took from September 27th until sometime in early November, where we finally start getting really close, and so let's get it up here to you guys.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess the other
I could get a copy of that PDF to you.
The other question I have will be then I'll reach out to Ms. Houston to follow up with finance on that.
I think everyone, for the most part, that was doing it, it was through Mr. Woolley, who was participating in this at this point. So I'm just like, the numbers are thin right now on who can communicate. That's the reality. But I will tell you at least how the lens works. I think the lens is you take the total number of employees, you take the increase in wages, you come up with a number and see how much of a percentage that difference is for what the budget that was already approved was. And I think that's a quick rule of thumb on how I believe the budget numbers get looked at and whether they seem to fall into a reasonable percentage. I think that's how the mayor's office has done it, how the business administrator has done it. That, what's the regional projection of wages going up in a period of time. And then it always is, if it comes into this pot, does it have to come out of another? And then that gets into a budgeting decision that has to get made.
Okay. Also, I'll have some follow-up from Ms. Houston. Thank you.
I would like to add one thing, President Williams. This is the most organized, the most detailed, the most comprehensive approach that Afscme has taken since I've been here. And I just wanted to compliment their leadership on putting that together. They came with an entire marked up contract with very specific things they wanted to talk about, with very clear reasons on each thing they wanted to talk about. And, that was a great development in the process where you could have a discussion on very specific things and the things that were important to the membership were laid out on the table at the very beginning. And it really did make the process a very productive back and forth, because now you knew what the issues really were. So.
Yeah, I have nothing but compliments for the Afscme leadership and the team that we dealt with. They were very professional, very accommodating, understood our position, and we think we understood theirs.
I just don't see, I just don't want January to come and you have 100+ employees who you promised a 3% raise. And you promised 3,000 per individual. And I find that I don't have enough money to be obligated to pay that. Because I don't have a budget that was done for me. So now I have to do a budget.
I don't want you to find that either.
And I don't think he should have been participating in that, knowing that he should have involved someone from council involved in that to let us know where he was going, what he was negotiating. Because now it falls on my shoulders. I have 100-some employees that won't receive $3,000 bonus, nor will they receive 3% because we don't know what the expenditures or revenues are yet.
I mean, this is part of the extension problem we've had. One part this year not having a mid-year budget review. And then part two is that we've typically been asked to approve contracts without ever having been at the table. So I think this is something just out of the future administration, just make sure that members of council are part of that process beforehand to report back to what's going on.
It's not the only contract. You have the FOP.
But it's every single collective bargaining agreement.
Firefighters. You have 3 different contracts.
That's correct.
And that's unfair for asking me for a mayor to sit down and do this without involving council, let us know what his intentions were.
And I just want to, again, just restate it, that I didn't make an offer of 1%, $1, 0,
No, I understand
minus
that.
2. And I just want to make sure that without being assured that there was money available to pay. Because otherwise.
Because even looking at the general fund, if we take it from there, and like last year, we did give them an incentive bonus. So are they going to look for another incentive bonus plus this bonus that we're giving them now? So I don't want that to be something that we're doing every year for the next 5 or 6 years post this.
And this isn't criticism of you. This is the
I'm
part of the
criticizing.
The challenge with the process as it's been done in the last 8 years.
So thank you for your hard work.
Well, I appreciate your time. And again, I wish everybody a happy holiday and enjoy the rest of the season and the rest of your evening. Thank you. It's good seeing you guys again.
Thank you. Because I think we have a larger than usual interest in this particular resolution. If there's specific public comment on resolution 82, 2021, I'm going to do that at this time. And I'll entertain that first from my right, if there's any comment.
This is mine?
Yeah, just for, yeah.
Just for because they're.
Yeah, no, I just see if there are any questions.
All right, anything from the middle on that? To the left? Okay, we'll keep moving. All right.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Moving on to Bill 20, 2021.
Bill 20 of 2021 is an ordinance of the city of Harrisburg establishing a new Part 2-1100 of the codified ordinances of Harrisburg entitled Responsible Contracting, establishing a governing threshold, providing for the adoption of certain procedures related to the solicitation and award of certain public contracts within the city, providing for certification requirements for certain public contractors, providing for certification requirements for subcontractors on certain public contracts, and providing for certain public contract review procedures.
Thank you. Neil, are you starting with the introduction on this?
Sure. This was actually a request from Chair Matson. This was his piece of legislation that he has asked us to do. We have tried to make it comport to the city code as it's written. There is already some responsible contractor definitional portions of the city glossary in the code, which arose during the LERTA bill way back when. There's a lot of similarities to that. And we've made a couple what we believe necessary modifications along the way to make it comport to the rest of the city code from what was originally proposed. I really think this is Mr. Matson's issue to discuss.
Yeah, just for the benefit of the group. So now that we're getting into a place now as a municipality where we've addressed a lot of our debt issues, probably start going back to the market sooner rather than later to start investing in capital improvement projects and public projects. And what this legislation essentially does is set standards for what that would look like when we put contracts out to bid. Historically, what has happened to several municipalities is some contractors put in artificially low bids in order to get awarded the work, but then will come back and say, well, we need to fix this, or we need to do this, or there's a change order here. And so what happens is when you look at the bids compared to so initially what was proposed as the bid is actually as high as some of the other responsible contractors have put in bids, because their bids are reflective of highest safety standards, certified apprenticeship programs, and other provisions like that that make sure that the work that we are giving is of the highest standard. So it's a good government initiative, but I will let our building trades group talk a little bit about and expand upon some of those things, because initially they had approached me about addressing and looking at this, the council looking at this legislation.
That's good. I'll turn it over to you, Ken.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me tonight, for having us. I'm Kevin Seidella from the Central Pennsylvania Building and Construction Trades Council. The main reason that we're interested in this language, we're so grateful that you have it in front of you for consideration. There's several things, but the paramount among them is safety. Making sure that projects over a certain threshold within the city are built with people with hands that are properly trained. It's a fact that I think a lot of folks in this area don't understand or don't know about. We have a lot of certified apprenticeship programs right here in this area, right here in your city, within walking distance of this room, that they've been there for 100 years, and they do a great job for our community in bringing folks in, training them. It's a unique way of training them. I mean, I went to college, went to a 4-year college. When I got done, I always say that my graduation present was a $50,000 bill. And that was 20 years ago. And now it's gone up exponentially. The folks that go through our apprenticeship programs, our certified apprenticeship programs, they get paid. They earn as they go. They get paid as they learn. They get pensions. They get a career. It is unlike anything else. So having this language, especially as we've proposed the amendment to include the certified apprenticeship programs, having this language in place helps support those local programs. I'm just a consultant for the Central Pennsylvania Building Trades. Full disclosure, I've never gone through an apprenticeship program, but I have a lot of folks here that came with me tonight that are willing to talk. They're residents. They run apprenticeship programs. They're business managers. And I was wondering if maybe it'd be all right if I could have a couple of them come up to the mic and also speak on behalf of this measure.
And prior even to doing that, actually, is there an amendment that we're already seeking for this too? Or is this?
Yeah, there was a request to maybe review the standards of the apprenticeship program. There's a couple of things of note as we were working with the Law Bureau on the legislation. One is that we will have to review this again once we finish our MWBE study from Impact Harrisburg, particularly on the threshold piece, and what that would look like. Once we have an idea of what our local small MWBEs, what kind of worker level they can contract at, I think we can better address that threshold. But then also, the other thing we'll have to look at is right now there's a large amount of money through going through the state and federal government around apprenticeship programs. So that term is getting thrown around a lot, but I think it's important that we have a discussion as to what the standards of the apprenticeship programs are. And I think it's really important that it's earned while you learn. A lot of apprenticeship programs that are out there being proposed don't have that provision of earn while you learn. Some even charge apprentices a fee to be part of it. And so I think part of this discussion and when we review this amendment is what kind of provisions as a city do we want when we talk about apprenticeship programs? And I know it's something that Mayor-elect Williams has talked about is how do we build a pipeline for future generations of tradespeople locally within the city? And I think as we talk about adult retraining, especially, a lot of people hit that benefits cliff where it becomes more expensive to work than to say be on benefits. And if you have a certified apprenticeship program with a career pathway that's local, that can address, so if folks don't, that if they have transportation issues, they can get to on-site, work there, but then also have a career pathway that gets them into the middle class. I think that's key. So I think that language provision is something we really need to look at and consider. So, but I think it'd be important to hear from the folks that have, from Harrisburg, that have participated in these programs. So.
Yeah, even maybe prior to that, we have like 1 or 2 or 3 can speak on that, but maybe let's do questions first and then go to that. So I'll open up questions to my colleagues. We'll start down at my left side, Councilmember Bowers.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, for being here tonight. Thank you, gentlemen. I look forward to hearing from you all. And thank you, Councilman Mattson, for bringing this to council. I think that it makes sense. So I think it should be a no-brainer for support, but thank you for your research and bringing this to the city.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Green.
One, thank you for coming. Thank you for this this legislation. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I look forward to supporting it. I do have a question as far as how these apprenticeships, how are they advertised? I know I've done a lot of work with the local high schools, local youth who are 18 to 24 who aren't in school anymore, and they're looking for these opportunities, but they find it hard to get into them.
Sure. It's a great question, Councilwoman. I appreciate it. We have about 5,200 members across central Pennsylvania. We have 34 different unions that we represent, my group represents, and a lot of the training centers, they do different things to advertise. Some of them are advertising on Facebook. Some of them are going to the trade schools themselves. They're going to the high schools, I should say, trying to reach out to students individually, let them know that they have this option, that not everybody needs to go to college and get a 4-year degree and end up like I did with a lot of debt. There's other paths. So every of the 34 apprenticeship programs that we have under our guys, they advertise in different ways. They do their own studies and figure out how they do things. But I think it's more gravitating as of late, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, gravitating towards social media. But Rob Baer might be able to add to that a little bit.
To your question, I run a federally registered apprenticeship program right here in the city. Been here 105 years. One of the things that we are required to do is we do community outreach. We go to all the trade schools in my whole geographic area. We advertise in 12 newspapers every year. We advertise the hours, okay? We do specific outreach to nonprofits, United Ways, all those, all right? I know one of you asked the question of the Afscme unit. Do you know the makeup of your unit? If you ask me, I can tell you, yeah. I'm a local union of 565 members, which almost 19% are minorities. I can give you my breakdown of my females. I can tell you my outreach, how we do it, okay? These programs are designed to be all-inclusive and to give everybody an opportunity to come to the middle class. My program, it's free for my apprentices. We pay for everything. You get accepted in the electrician's apprenticeship program, your cost is zero. We provide your computers, we provide your tools at the training center, we provide all your education, all your testing, and when you're done, you have a journeyman's card and you have a career. Right now, currently, a journeyman making 40 hours, working 40 hours a week, 160 hours a month, approximately $67,000 a year in your pocket. I also provide medical, dental, prescription, and eye care. 0 copays, 0 deductibles, 100% family coverage. I have 3 pension plans for my participants and a very, very lucrative defined contribution, which to the normal rank and file is a 401, of which, not out of their check, out of their package, an additional $10,000 a year is put away for their retirement. Okay. These programs and what you're looking at tonight is a way to embrace your city residents, your children that probably don't have an opportunity to go to college. And I hate to put it flippantly, they don't need to. There are careers in the building trades that are second to none. And it doesn't matter if you're a man, a woman, African American, if you're Hispanic, if you're Latino, or you're a white guy like me. Those opportunities are afforded to everyone. Okay, everyone. The building trades, I like to say, we're the last true colorblind organization out there. You belong to a fraternal organization of a brother and a sisterhood that's second to none. Okay? I call all of these brothers and sisters because we all have something that nobody else does. We all belong, we all have a yellow tag in our pocket that says we earned it. Nothing was given, it was earned. And that's what we also want to teach our children, do we not? We want to teach them, you earn it. And when you do earn it, you enjoy it. And I know Councilwoman Williams is laughing because we've had this discussion.
I want to join. I'll trade.
Okay? What's wrong with a young man or a young woman finishing up at 22 or 23 years of age and being able to afford a home, being able to afford to start a family? The Councilwoman's Daniels question about maternity. Most employers don't offer any type of maternity leave for their employees. We do it as our union. 6 months. And while you're off on maternity leave, we also contribute to your pension and your health and welfare, and you're covered the whole time you're off. Okay? Who else does that? We do. You know why? Because to your point, when I took over this business management 14 years ago, I found out that a lot of healthcare plans didn't even address our female members' concerns over birth control. You know what I did day one? Changed the healthcare plan. Okay? This is why these programs are so important. And this is why it's so important to have the opportunity in urban areas to bring our youth in. Okay? If you have any other direct questions on apprenticeship programs, I'd be happy to answer them. Councilman Madison knows my office. He knows my training center. If any of you want to see a training center, I don't. My union does. We own the whole corner of 1800 and State Street. And Councilwoman Williams was instrumental in getting us in that building because we had been here over 100 years at that time. We said we're going to stay here. So if you'd all like to tour a training center, I would be more than happy to invite you up. You can watch my apprentices. You can watch the hands-on training. And you can actually see what we're all about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'd love to take you up on that opportunity and come take a tour. Also working in a lot of the local high schools through my daytime job, I find that a lot of technical schools it's addressed to, and you've got unions going out recruiting, but a lot of non-technical high schools. And when you're in the city of Harrisburg, our school district doesn't have its own technical school. We have a limited amount of students we can send to BC Tech. And a lot of the students who are at the main high school and even at Sci Tech aren't looking to go to college and could use these type of careers. So I think that's an entire demographic. Even at Still High, I've done some work, and it's an entire demographic that's missed out upon because it's like you're not pursuing a technical career. A lot of them don't have the opportunity because the space is limited.
I will be very bluntly honest. We have had a hard time for many years getting into school districts other than technical schools. A lot of administrators and guidance counselors don't want to hear that you don't want to send your children to college. And we have been turned away because we're a union. Now, that's wrong, and we've been breaking down those doors, but that is a problem. And I will tell you, even under the school district being in receivership here, I have reached out to the receiver multiple times when this first started and said, we would love to come in and show you what's available. Every time I got silence. So we will do that outreach. We will come to any school and talk to any class of kids. And the thing I want to stress is, I'm standing here as an electrician. I got Mike Ford from the sheet metal. Where's Billy? Billy McGee from the insulators. So I Pete from the insulators. I got Joey Gusler, district council rep for the laborers. We have ironworker programs. We have pipe fitter programs. Okay. We have glazer programs. So even if a kid doesn't want to hear from me and say, man, I don't want to mess with electricity and get electrocuted, there is plenty of the same type of apprenticeship programs available. Right? I became an electrician. I'm third generation. My grandfather started his apprenticeship at 46. My pop started in 66. I started in 87. I knew nothing but the IBW, nothing but being a wireman. Okay. And I will tell you, I'm blessed. I've had a wonderful career and a wonderful living. All these brothers and sisters behind me have too. We just want you to know that we want to give the kids in this community that opportunity also. Okay? And part of this legislation will allow that. The biggest hurdle to your youth in Harrisburg is being able to even afford transportation to get to work. How many 18-year-olds in Harrisburg own reliable transportation? And one of the things about responsible contractor language is if our contractors are good contractors working in your city, I can take a city youth, I can bring him into this program, I can keep him working in your city, in his community, where he doesn't have to drive 50 miles. And in 1 year, his first year of apprenticeship with me, he started out at $34,000 a year, plus his benefits. So at the end of that year, a young man or woman probably can at that point afford reliable transportation. And we work with them on budgeting. We work with them on raising families, having homes. We hold classes for them. We hold classes on investing and show them what they need to do early on to set themselves up for success on the path for later in life. But it all comes down to one big thing. We have to have the work, okay? And we have to have the work locally to give these young men and women that opportunity. It doesn't do me any good. My territory goes from the top of the 7 mountains to the Maryland border. I go from Berks County the whole way over to York. I live in Juniata County. My office is here, 1501 Revere Street. President Williams has been there many times. Councilman Madison has been there many times. It's nothing for our guys to drive an hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half, 2 hours to go to a job. But that limits our youth that can come into these programs because they have to be able to get there. We got to be able to give them that first year that they can make some money. They can start building their pensions, start getting their health care, getting on the right track, and then work with them and then get them a career. Okay. Thank you for your time. And
Thank you.
anytime you want to come up, you're welcome to visit my training center.
I appreciate it. I will take you up on that offer. I look forward to working with you.
That's what you do. Madison, do you have any questions?
Yeah. A lot of part of this discussion has been on the workforce piece, but I do think it's important to highlight some of the safety standards that's in the legislation. And then also if you could touch on that underbidding process of how some contractors underbid and then come back and up the price.
As far as the safety features go, I mean, I think you mean what you're referring to is how we offer OSHA training and all of this to the certified apprenticeship programs.
Yeah.
So all of that is a requirement. So we want to make sure that those boxes are checked when they apply for a contract. What was your other push?
Just on so some contractors come and underbid, but then come back with.
We see it a lot. I mean, it does happen. And that I think that's what kills a municipal government as far as these local projects go, or these projects that are run by the city, is the fact that they come in with the lowest bid possible. They aren't necessarily responsible. They may not have the experience. And then it's a change order and another change order and another change order. I was an elected official in Sweat Township for 7 years. I saw this. This happened a lot. That's what we're trying to avoid is that change order, because it turns a $200,000 project into a $400,000 project very quickly. But if you put these requirements in place, make sure that the folks that are putting hands on the project are properly trained, as we're suggesting, less likelihood of a change order. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President. I have no questions. I agree with you. Councilmember Majors.
No questions. No questions.
Thank you.
Councilmember Daniels.
Just to confirm, so this doesn't just cover the bidder, but it also covers the subcontractors that the bidder contracts with.
Yes, ma'am. That's what we're suggesting is the subcontractor should meet the same standards. That way we don't have someone who did pay to have folks trained just sub all the work out to folks who aren't trained and are putting hands on the project that aren't properly and adequately trained. Make sure that the projects that are done for the city of Harrisburg are done completely safely.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, just by way of process. I know we're talking about the amendment. Do we have verbiage for that amendment already, or do we need to kind of put that in place? I'm just thinking in terms of
I think you could discuss what was proposed.
Okay, so we can already discuss this as amended.
No, it's not as amended yet, but like the purpose of any work session with the bill is to see whether
Right,
they want to change it anyway. So the concepts are pretty simple, I think, of what the proposed changes are.
We can introduce that as a motion at the legislative session.
Right, I want to.
Here's a copy of it.
Yes, I have a copy of what we're suggesting. We'll basically remove section 10, remove it all together and replace it with language that's specific to a Class A apprenticeship training program. And I have everything stipulated right here.
I'm going to hand that to our city clerk, if you will.
Sure.
Include that in.
And was there anyone else who wanted to make a comment? I know we talked about
We do have quite a few residents that would like to come and speak on what their experience was with an apprenticeship program. So I'm going to start here with Conrad. Thank you for allowing us to do this.
Yep, if we could, and I appreciate everyone talking, we can keep it somewhat brief because we've had a lengthy meeting so far. So I'm sure you all want to get home too.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Conrad. I'm also doing an apprenticeship. The good things about this apprenticeship is that I wish I'd known about it years ago. I've been in Pennsylvania and Harrisburg since 1976. I see this city, I see buildings go down, and buildings go up. I wish someone who came to my high school and told me this was available. This opportunity to work in the same thing I'm going to school for and not have that financial burden, just to be able to take care of home. The benefit didn't just include me, include my family. It's just been great. I wish someone would invite me to go to the high school, the Boys and Girls Club, community centers, and let them know it's out here, because I didn't know about it. In my class, they teased me as the 50-year-old apprentice when I started. I'm 53 now, and I graduated this year. But the program's been great to me. I have no stress about having to pay it back because it's paid by the retirees, people that came through before me. As I'm coming through now, I'm gonna pay for the guys that come into the program after me. So it's a great program that I wish was more known in the community. And I know not everyone wants to go to college or to the military after high school. This is available. Let's get it out there. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Stephanie. I am with the Sheet Metal Workers Local Union 19, and I have prepared a statement to read because I'm not too much of a public speaker, but I am in full support of the responsible contract ordinance. I am a second-year apprentice with the Sheet Metal Workers Local Union 19. Before I was accepted into the apprenticeship program, I worked for the state for 11 years. Not that I'm not grateful for my time I had with my previous employer. I was no longer fulfilled due to feeling stagnant in my growth and advancement in my career. I felt like I maxed out, hit a dead end, and a total standstill. I knew I needed something more. I had the desire to keep growing, progressing, advancing, and the need to love and be excited in what I do. Those desires and needs were no longer being met, so I knew it was time to make a career change that satisfied my craving to be so much more, to achieve the real success that I knew I was capable of obtaining through determination, hard work, and proper training, hands-on, on-the-job paid training. Coming from no type of experience or background in the sheet metal, I needed the opportunity to receive the proper training to not only provide me the necessary skills to become a solid tradesman, but to also give me the confidence in my abilities through the proper training. And that is something I definitely received through the apprenticeship program that I am thankful to be accepted into. Lastly, the brotherhood that is shared amongst us in the local Union 19, wanting to see committed apprentices develop into thriving and productive journeymen. Our trainers and current journeymen provide us with the tools for success to become an asset to any contractor who needs skillful, hardworking, knowledgeable workers to not only get the job done right, but know how to do so through the safety measures that are also taught to us so we can all return back home safely. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mike Camilla. I'm a resident of Harrisburg since 1995. I've been a resident of Pennsylvania since, I've been a resident of Harrisburg since 2008. I've been a resident of Pennsylvania since 1995. And in 2018, I joined the labor union, local labor union on 1180. And from what I got out of the apprenticeship program is the ability to complete multiple tasks competently with state certifications and the ability to go other places with these certifications within the state of Pennsylvania.
Good evening. My name is Kyle Chubb. I'm a resident of Harrisburg here for a little bit. I grew up the whole way around. I'm very familiar with Harrisburg. I've done a lot of work in Harrisburg due to our apprenticeship program. Our apprenticeship, I just recently booked out of our apprenticeship program at the beginning of the year. And my apprenticeship has given me so many opportunities to do our work safe and do a quality work around the area. Like was previously brought up, OSHA 30, being an insulator or asbestos training, to do that safely. I mean, it's EPA, you have to do it safely. The Twix certs, and so many other opportunities involved in it. My apprenticeship program gave me the opportunity because I was never familiar with insulation. I actually got into a car background before I got into insulation. So I was trained by highly skilled, highly qualified instructors and given the opportunity to do what I do every day and put a high priority on quality work and doing it safely every day and all day around our community. And it just, we need the apprenticeship program, and I highly recommend this bill. I mean, it's important to us. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Bill McGee. I represent insulation workers in the city of Harrisburg. And I think this is a very important bill, ordinance. I also think it's important for the council persons. The administration approves a level of a contract up to a certain point, and then it's council's opportunity to approve above that threshold. I don't know what the threshold is, but I'm assuming it's somewhere in line with where we're at. And I think it's important that the council people understand how, you know, the term responsible contracting is phenomenal for, it helps assure you that, you know, these questions are going to be asked these contractors and that they, so you don't have to go back on something you approved. I think it gives you an assurance. Rob Baird did a great job on some of the other points I was going to talk about. But opportunity is the biggest one that sticks out of my mind, and I think that's been spoken about tonight pretty much. Some of the people that have opportunity to come into our apprenticeship training, when they come in, I tell them, welcome to the middle class. Now it's up to you to protect it. And to protect it means to get trained properly and to deliver a good quality product. And this is going to be great for the community too. And also for the taxpayers, because it's responsible and it's responsible for the taxpayers. You have their tax money and it's, you know, so those are just a few things. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Hi, I'm not with the apprenticeship, but I'm a city resident and I want to talk about this amendment here. I think this is a good amendment. I think it's a good start. But I do think that it could be strengthened. I think that there should be an ordinance to include public buildings that are renovated by private contractors such as the bathhouse. That was privately contracted and we didn't know about it. And as far as I know, the contractor that did the work on that building doesn't even have a website. So when it comes to specifically to Dave's question regarding the change orders, I actually have worked as a federal contracting officer, had a $10 million signature authority, and I specialized in construction and architect engineering contracts. That issue probably comes down to the way the requirements were written. It comes down to the training of the procurement office and who wrote the solicitation and who wrote the request for proposal. So you can't put the whole responsibility on the contractor if it was a bad contract as it was written. So that's something that our new administration should pay close attention to and make sure that the people who are working in your procurement office have the adequate training and know what to look for so that you can mitigate that before it even happens.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
And we will put that onto our agenda for next week's legislative session as a matter of the motion for that too. So that concludes budget and finance.
Thank you, Mr. Allett. We now will move on to Community Economic Development Committee.
Madam President, if I may just interrupt for a second. At the last council meeting, there was a request that Law Bureau provide the tax council on Bill 15, who have been sitting through here tonight. It's my oversight that they're just not on the agenda, but they've been sitting here all night. As requested, we were asked to bring them on the 7th to discuss that bill. So I'm not sure.
We don't have Bill. Have Bill 15. We don't have Bill 15.
Right. So Bill 15, the request at the last meeting was to bring the tax council, who was unavailable at the time, in on the 7th. They're sitting here and as I'm looking here, I realize it's not on the agenda.
All right.
So I have to, if the council's going to hear communication from them or whether we should let them go home.
Okay, they're here.
Okay.
Are they here?
They are.
Your Allett has to leave. Okay, I'm sorry I had you waiting. I'm sorry. We did not have them.
That's not a problem. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Devin Trelostik. I'm an attorney with the law firm McNeese, Wallace and Nurek. Resided in the city since 2003 after I graduated law school, and I coordinate the city projects for my firm McNeese. I'm here with my partner Renee Lear, who's the chair of our employee benefits group.
Okay.
Sure.
It's my understanding that we were requested to come here this evening to discuss the ordinance that I believe was on the working calendar last week. And just to give you a little background, what has occurred is that there was a request for proposals issued by the pension board, the police pension board, that McNeese responded to, and McNeese was chosen as the law firm to provide advice to the pension board. We were charged with doing was to look at the current ordinances related to the police pension and to provide any suggestions on compliance with tax laws, as well as with coordinating it with the current CBA and other financial commitments that the city of Harrisburg had made at the time. With that in mind, just a little bit more background, There's several laws that apply to pension benefits, but because it's a governmental agency, it's narrowed down to a few. And I believe Neil has distributed the memo that was.
We did email council the memos that were produced by council to the pension board on the two issues that from our view are interrelated and both addressed in the amended ordinance.
I think they wanted to know, I just spoke about a caveat. In my notes here is that council members have asked that they give us a better understanding of providing technical amendments and what type of technical amendments that reach the final summary for the pension. I think that's what one of the question was as I wrote it down here.
Right. So with respect to the changes in the final salary under the ordinance, under the Internal Revenue Code, one of the most important provisions in the Internal Revenue Code indicates that if you have a pension plan, that if you're going to provide pension benefits, that someone should be able to look at the pension plan and determine what the benefits are. I say that loosely because when you look at a pension plan, most normal people can't figure out the actual pension benefits. But if you had an actuary who picked up the plan, that they could actually do the math and determine this person's going to get this amount of money, this person's going to get that amount of money. Under the collective bargaining agreement, there was provisions in with respect to the with respect to the bump up. And that was not in the pension plan. And when I say plan, it's the ordinance. Under the IRS uses the term plan, but because again, you guys are a governmental agency, you have it in an ordinance and that's considered your plan. That was not contained in the ordinance, even though the benefits were being provided by using that definition of final salary. In addition, it was my understanding that the city had made other commitments on how the definition of final salary would be made to certain classifications of individuals, and that's those who you guys essentially chose would receive a different definition of final salary. So we attempted to coordinate that as well in the ordinance to set up that other classification of employees.
Council members, let's start with Ms. Bowers.
No, thank you. Thanks for being here tonight and providing some clarity.
Ms. Green.
Just a couple of things. Now, if I'm correct, this was to align it with Resolution 68 of 2020 that we had passed.
Right, the resolution that provided for a form of a contract that was approved for managers for retention purposes because they're all eligible to retire. So the two line up together. So there's other provisions that are also in this that are to bring this into compliance with the IRS code. The one that seemed to be the sticking point of council was the one related to the managers. You know, at one point, a union contract provided by a certain date a 10% bump on the last day of work for any police officer at the date of their retirement. There's no additional contribution made. They're technically called an inspector for the purposes of the contract for that day, but they make no additional contribution to the plan. But they get a 10% bump if they retire. In the next round of contracts that was negotiated to be a flat $7,500, beginning on a date certain, I believe was January 1 of this year. But COVID sort of mixed my brain for calendar. So, but that is I believe that's the date that took place. And so none of that was covered in the pension plan, but we were distributing under the pension plan to union members for this. So we had to make a modification for them. With the contract for retention, it was so that when asked to stay, they could stay without losing the pension benefit because the management had the right to walk out the door under their terms any day of the week. And there was a question of retaining management for the police. It's still a question. I think you're going to lose 2 captains next year. You know, you're under risk of really having a vacuum in leadership. So that was the discussion back then. And the technical amendments came to bring both the union contract into compliance with the IRS code and the third class city code, which had changed from the last time the pension ordinance was written. And the sticking point for council, as I understand, were those points about the additional funding for management. The city contributes every year through the minimum, what is the MOM, I believe it's called, the minimum, or MMO, minimum contribution we have to make. We normally take state money and put that into the pension plan. But eventually, all the additional money comes out of taxpayer dollars because there is an additional contribution from the plan member when they get the bump at the end of their contract, or the end of the retirement. So both for union members and management, it is the same in that sense. The classification is simply the differences in the management ones. And from our view, the uniformity provided by the IRS code is what the issue is. And that is the uniformity the plan has to meet. And I mentioned before, the union has a slightly different view than that. And, they've made that clear to us. But from our view, it comported to our efforts to bring the plan into compliance, the ordinance into compliance. So there's not a question on the plan from the IRS at the end of the day. That was the issue that we had in terms of starting this process. I will note the Office of the City Solicitor is also by definition the solicitor to the pension board. So we attend their meetings and provide legal guidance on the plan. And again, it's dictated by what the city ordinance is.
Thank you for that information. If I recall during the last meeting, which we discussed this at, there was some questions about language that gave, in some opinion, too much discretion to the mayor. Was that language pulled directly from the contract of Resolution 68, or is that rephrased somehow?
Yeah, and I think that's really just a reading of it the council had, because that wasn't the intention of the language. The council gave a mayor the ability to have a form of contract for retention of that, and they approved the form of the contract. It doesn't give a mayor discretion to spend money that's not in the city budget. It's just to negotiate with individual managers, and essentially they've done the identical contract, the three of them. That's what they have done, but it was to basically not presuppose that there would be something different for a particular manager in police who might have some other provision that's more important to them that was available to them. So I recognize the question was about that. That question, frankly, was a surprise to me that there was lots of discretion, because it didn't seem to be much discretion, because the contract language was approved by council as this is what you must use if you want to go down this path.
And then I believe during this discussion, you said that if we did not pass this legislation by the end of this year, that it would then die and we would be responsible for paying anyone who retired before something like this we passed. We will be responsible for their contributing their final cost up front. Could you explain that a little more, or if you have the final?
And Renee could sort of speak to this about the IRS code and when things have to be adopted, but we have one manager, one captain, or deputy chief who retired this year. If this is not, for his contract to be funded, it's one of two ways. It's in the pension, or it's the city funding it straight up. And because of what it is, it's my understanding, and Renee can correct me if I'm wrong, we have to fund the entire, what is the word? What is it we buy? Annuity. We have to fund the annuity up front and pay the tax consequence of the annuity up front in order to guarantee that for the estimated life of the individual.
So it's my understanding that there's a contract with the individual, which indicates that this year that person would actually be receiving this benefit. That's different from the union or the other officers who are actually receiving the payment, the benefit, without it actually being in the plan. But for this management individual, the pension has not been paying that management individual the amount. And therefore, and I would defer to Nick, to Neil, it's therefore, you have a contractual obligation to an individual to pay them something. And if you can't do it or decide not to do it through the pension plan, then you would need to fund an annuity because the other options are not available.
All right, and then I think the final question that was asked during this session was, do we know how much that initial cost would be?
And I had done those calculations with Mark, so I'm trying to go back and find what I got from Mark, but I have not yet done that. I have not found them. And I think they were frankly pretty loose on terms of the total thing, but it's basically a formula. You take the additional funds, you buy an annuity, you price it into the market. And then additionally, because it's a make-whole type of contract, it's also the cost of the taxes that get paid on the front end for the entire annuity that get paid up front. So if it's a 30-year life expectancy, that is what you're looking at, is paying the taxes and the annuity on the front end to cover both things. Whereas we already contribute every year to the pension plan, and we would pay on it just like we do an annual contribution. We keep the pension plan sound, it wouldn't impact it in any significant way at all, and it wouldn't change the contribution of any member or any manager. Just their contributions would stay the same as they always had been.
All right, that's the only questions I have.
Okay.
No questions from me.
No questions for me. Thank you.
Ms. Daniels? No questions. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Ms. Houston, we will add this to the agenda for a vote on December 14th. Moving on to Community Economic Development Committee, Mr. Mattson.
Thank you, President Williams. Is someone present from the administration to go over the resolution? Mr. Knight, I'm assuming that's you?
Yes.
Okay. Floor is yours, sir.
Okay, I assume this is resolution 78.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, could we read the resolution 78 to the record, please?
Resolution 78 of 2021 is a resolution approving a preliminary final land development and subdivision plan to consolidate 21 lots and re-subdivide them into 9 lots to allow the construction of a mixed-use building featuring a community center, 12 apartment units, and accessory parking on 1 parcel and 8 separate parcels, each accommodating a single townhouse in the square block bounded by Hamilton Street, Logan Street, Clinton Street, and North 3rd Street.
Okay. Good evening, council members. This application here before you is kind of the other aspect of the street vacation that was initially introduced way at the beginning of tonight's meeting here. This is the part of the project that will be effectuated by the vacation of the rights of way consolidation and then subdivision into the 9 lots, as Ms. Houston read. The overall project will involve right now the properties are largely vacant lots. There is a community garden on the 3rd Street frontage of the properties. And I think the applicants will maybe be able to speak a little bit more to that aspect later. But the project itself will involve the construction of a community center on that location with 12 units above, 12 apartment units, and then there'll be 8 separate townhome units in 2 four block sets fronting Logan Street to the east. And then there'll be internal driveway access and as well as a pedestrian walkway through the site. That all being said, the Planning Commission recommended that the request be approved with the following conditions. The applicant will receive approval of the street vacation application for the rights of way which run across the proposed project site, which was submitted concurrent with this application. The applicant will submit a photometric plan for the mixed use portion of the project, as the design of that building may result in light spillover onto adjacent residential properties. And that's because the first floor, which will comprise the community center, I believe the applicants indicated there'd be about like floor to ceiling windows. And so there might be like light spillover out across the street or into adjacent properties. The easier public access The Bureau would recommend that the applicant consider installing racks in front of the mixed-use building along the North Third Street sidewalk. In the initial proposal, they were kind of set back behind the mixed-use building, but we wanted them to be out a little bit more publicly visible and publicly accessible, so that it was evident that the racks were for the public and that it wasn't just for residents of the development. The applicant will coordinate with the city arborist on the type and location of vegetation to be planted on site. And the applicant has done that. I've been involved with several emails over the past few days where they're discussing where that will occur. And the applicant will coordinate with the Department of Public Works to update the billing account and identify the appropriate refuse storage needs and location. With that many units, it's likely there'll be maybe a dumpster pad that would be like internal to the site. So we just want to make sure that the Department of Public Works can get their trucks in there and make sure that they can access the bins. The Planning Commission recommended that the request be approved for the following reasons. If a project proposes infill development that maintains the character of the surrounding neighborhood, both in terms of building massing, use, and design, and will develop currently vacant lots with a diversity of housing units. The project will result in the establishment of new residential units in 2 different configurations, both townhomes and apartment units, to add additional inventory to a neighborhood with a substantial demand for new housing. And the applicant has received the requisite zoning relief approvals to pursue the submitted development project and has submitted a concurrent street vacation application to enable the project to move forward as proposed. And I'd note that the applicant has also received approval from HARB for the aspect of the project that fronts North Third Street, which is in the Old Uptown Municipal Historic District.
The applicant have anything they'd like to add? Take your time. State your name for the record.
Matthew Long. Just this is, as many of you may know or may not know, this is phase 1 of 12 phases that are going to be being put forward here over the next year. This phase, as discussed, is going to be the 4-story building that will house the community center on the first floor. And then it will also create 8 new townhomes to bring homeownership into the city. It's a very broad plan that we're putting forward here. The next phase is 2 and 2A. We've had a lot of discussions recently with Representative Kim to look into using the I believe it's the City Revitalization Fund through PHFA. So this plan, because I know it's a hot topic question, is if this is going to include affordable housing. Phase 1 does not. When we look at this from a balance sheet, we're going to be covering the cost of the community center at first. So that's already the first, dip into it right there. So for this phase, it wasn't able to be included with the affordable. So phase 2 actually has 4 buildings. 3 of which buildings will be completely affordable through PHFA, through the HUD guidelines. I just wanted to address that now, so that way it was completely out there. And then each subsequent phase after that will have a mixture of portions in it. We want to hit every income level. We want to create home ownership. We want to create housing, for every level, not just market rate, as you see so often. I think that I just wanted to address that straightforward.
Sir, who are you?
I'm Jeff Schick with K&W. I'm here to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Touch on follow-up. Appreciate the affordable housing question. That was one of them.
Mhm.
Maybe talk us about the community center.
Yep.
The plans for it, how that would work, how big it would be, opportunities for the community.
Yep, it'll be 100% open to the public. It's kind of a touchy subject to get a nonprofit to sign on when you're not 100% approved. We had approached several nonprofits, including Friends in Midtown, since that's right in our footprint in Mac. And no one wants to put their name with it because they don't want to be impartial to one project over another. So once we are building the building, we'll be able to approach a leadership program for it. We will be covering all costs for the first year guaranteed. Be 100% open to the public. The idea is to kind of divide it into 4. It's about 5,000 square feet. We've 4,680 square feet footprint. Divide that into about 4 areas that could be used for classrooms, anything. It's an adaptive use. To give an example, Some may also know, we recently purchased the Camp Curtin United Methodist Church. One of the reasons we did that was because it has a 7-year clause that it cannot be changed. And that kind of scared us a little bit because someone coming in and buying it and not doing anything with it for 7 years, keeping it up. So we took a goal there, and this is an existing building, so we can actually reach out. That is 100% for nonprofits. So we will take the model that we're doing there, because we recently worked with us. We actually had an inquiry this last week because we put out a solicitation to many nonprofits to use that project in particular. And we already had one inquiry this week for a vocational charter school to go in there. So once we have approval on this, we would go through the same type of solicitation process for the community center for adaptive uses. If that makes sense. So a lot of people, I'm sure you've been through there. The basement is almost 9,400 square feet. And then the old church in the back is about 4,800 square feet. So it gives you a very nice footprint. Now, the National Historic Registry portion covers the sanctuary of the 1915 portion. So our biggest thought was, well, what we can do, sanctuary can't be touched, but everything else can be. And that's why we've solicited it for nonprofits to go in there. And the first one that came back as an inquiry was for a vocational charter school. Be from 9th grade to 12th grade. It's an existing program. It's Patricia Robinson. What's that? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. But that would be the same solicitation process. It has to be a nonprofit use. It wouldn't be, we wouldn't allow anyone for public in there or for private.
Touch on a little bit on local participation, specifically MWP participation plan.
Mm-hmm.
What that look like. And
yep, absolutely. Every single project, our firm, the construction aspect of this has always held over a 25% standard, and we will meet or exceed that. And that's nothing we've been bound to, but we've always done.
would you mind letting us know when you put out the bid so we can share it to our networks?
Absolutely.
And folks have an opportunity to bid, and then when you award it, would you mind sharing that with council just so we kind of know what work?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If folks were not awarded work, just to let us know why you selected the ones that you did.
Gotcha. Yep.
I'll leave it at that and open it up to my colleagues. Since it's regarding housing, I will open it up. Start to my left with Councilwoman Bowers.
Thank you, Chair Madsen. Good evening. I would like to follow up, of course, on the affordable housing pieces. I know, Mr. Long, you've been before us before, so you, I think, could anticipate my line of questioning with the affordable housing legislation. But in reading the Planning Commission report, and then your sharing of the phase 2 portion, I guess I'm just not sure why. I get the community center is an expense, but it's only 12 units. So in my math, it would have only been 2, but in this report, it notes 3 would have been deemed affordable for our residents. So I'm just not clear why that couldn't take place.
We're still taking into consideration 16 of 2020 on the apartment there. I just don't want to go saying that this is going to be an affordable housing project. Are we looking to incorporate 3 units? Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but it isn't, the project as a whole will not be. Project phase 2 will be 100% affordable. Every one of those buildings, every one of those units in those 3 buildings will. That's, I just want to make sure there's a broad define between the 2.
Okay. So
No
what I'm
misrepresentation.
hearing is
Sorry.
there's still a possibility that the 3
For the
in phase
3
1
units, yes.
could
Yes.
be deemed affordable for our residents.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I have another question regarding community outreach, because I think I participated in one virtually.
Yes.
But if you could please discuss the community outreach that occurred.
Yep, actually, Jeff, I think you had the dates. So there was virtual events February 8th and 4th. I mean, that was right when we were in the middle of COVID. And then we had on-site visits that were published to several different Facebook groups. It's not Facebook, it was another group. I think that's it, next door, that we published to. There was public events held October 9th, 5th, and September 25th on site to go over not only this phase one, but the entire project as a whole.
Okay, what type of feedback did you receive from residents?
So on phase one, in full transparency, we did not receive negative feedback on phase one. The proposed phase 5 did have about 4 opposition come forward. Because it's a larger build, it's on a residential area, and we were pushing for a heavier commercial use. Now, that is nothing we've submitted. This was the reason we're holding these public events, is to get feedback, when we looked at this a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago almost now, this was all townhouses. And then, we got pushback. You can't just build townhouses. We adapted our plan to change. So phase 4 or 5, I forget how it's presented, did have a group of 4 that came out adamantly against the project, and we have since started re-rendering, but nothing on this phase.
Okay, so moving forward, can the community expect continued engagement and other opportunities as you move through these phases with this project?
Absolutely. We were not required to do as many as we did. I mean, we did above the standard, and we plan on continuing that through every phase. It will show the adaptive changes of every phase following that. Now, there's going to be several coming out in the first few months of the year. So there's going to be several events every month concurrent with it.
Okay, great. Final question is relative to the community center.
Yes.
I know on the virtual conversation that I participated in, there were some questions whether this community center would be open to the entire city, any resident, or was it just situated for the residents that reside within the building?
There is no intention to block anyone from the city from coming there. It's going to be 100% public. There's not going to be any form of selection of that.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because I know that came up. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilwoman Green.
I don't have many questions. I've seen this come before me a couple of times on the planning commission. Just one question that's always brought up anytime we're talking about housing is parking. What are your thoughts on parking, your plan?
Yep. So every townhouse has a 2-car garage. It also has parking behind it. The apartment, now to address community center 100% separately, it's a community center. The intent that is people are going to walk there, they're going to ride their bike there. Now, as addressed in planning, there are parking spaces that will be set aside for that. And then we are also entering into a lease agreement with HAC for additional parking, so that way every apartment has a parking space.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. President Wayne.
I'm sorry, phase 1 is what, 12 townhouses?
That's eight townhouses, 12 apartments in the community center.
Okay, so phase 2 is 3 buildings with townhouses, or?
No, phase 2 is 4 buildings. They're all within a block and a half radius on, they're all on 4th Street. 2 on each side of Hamilton, 1 on Clinton, and 1 on Harris.
Houses?
No, they're mixed use buildings. So the City Revitalization Fund for PHFA, I'm sure you're very well aware of PHFA's guidelines. Typically, they award, like the Penn Home grants and everything that way to 28 units or more. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at the City Revitalization Fund, which offers mixed use. They want smaller community-based businesses, 1 to 4,000 square feet commercial on the first floor, and then the affordable housing above. So you'd have a small storefront. It wouldn't be anything bigger, gaudy there. It'd be, they actually have guidelines of what the rents can be on the commercial aspect even. to promote local business rather than a chain or anything that way. And then the apartments above, which on 2 of the buildings will be 2 floors above and 1 building will be 3 floors above. Those will all be the affordable units. Yep, so that is far. Yep, no,
And that
that,
area was predominantly single family.
yep. So there are phases that have affordable townhomes. It's not in phase 1 or 2. There are affordable townhomes.
What phases are, what phases, 3, 4, 5?
I
I mean, you have to understand, the city of Harrisburg
Mhm.
needs housing.
Yep.
We can, I continue putting people in private.
Absolutely.
Apartments that have a storefront downstairs and apartments upstairs. They need to be single family homes with children that can go and have a yard and a front.
Mhm.
Like, that's how that area was constructed 20 years ago, with homes, single family homes. So I don't know why we keep encouraging development of townhouses, apartment buildings, to put people in that type of structure, instead of putting them in a single family home setting. I just have a concern about that.
Understandably. Yep. And we're trying to address them the best we can. I mean, we're a developer. We're never going to make everyone happy, but we're trying to be as adaptive.
I'm trying to make us happy. 7 of us sitting here.
Yep.
That have 50,000 residents plus population in the city of Harrisburg. That have landlords, slum landlords charging $1,200 to live in unfit homes. Housing is needed here, not to continue putting buildings here and putting people in apartments. They need to live in single family homes.
We have nearly.
But you come here and ask for us to approve your land development plan, to approve your building. But I don't agree with this. I agree with utilizing that lots. You've taken down all the homes there. I've lived here for the last 60 years, so I know what was there. Nothing but single family homes. First Hack proposed a plan to have educational institution there with a parking lot. Took down 10, 15 homes for that purpose. Since then moved, but we have empty parking lots. So now here you coming in with buildings again, with storefronts and apartments over top of that. What about single family homes? You're doing townhouses. So why would you not construct homes around that area?
We will be in the subsequent phases after, and this phase does have eight single family homes in it.
I'm just going to tell you, I'm not, my vote is no on this.
Thank you, President Williams. Council Majors.
Thank you. So still non-committal on affordable housing, still under consideration for the affordable housing as a part of this phase, correct?
Correct.
And as Council Member Bowers pointed out, you'd only be looking at 2 units. I know,
It would be 3. And the way just to be fully transparent, the way we'll approach this is, as I had mentioned on the planning, is I don't believe anyone's used Bill 16 of 2020 as of yet. I don't know if it's been implemented on any project yet.
No, and another point of quick clarification for the Law Bureau. This came down after the ordinance has been in effect, or was this something that has been pending?
The application came down after the effective date of the ordinance, but I would note the administration has not promulgated the forms and process for that bill.
Okay.
So, but the ordinance is in effect.
The ordinance is in effect. Okay. So continue.
So the goal would be to meet and work through every detail of that and make sure there's not something in there that is going to disqualify us for the project. You know, the idea is that we will meet with all to work through every applicable part to be concurrent with 16 of 2020.
Okay.
It's never been done. So to say, well, we're going to do it 100%, there might be something that does not work for us when we get into that. So we want to make sure that that's good. I'm not going to sit here and say we will do it in case there is something.
No, I started off by saying you were still short, so I'm not trying to commit you to anything at this current time. And look at the unit size for the apartments. What, in terms of pricing, are you looking at based upon your goal to hit your numbers?
Yep. So it's between 1,000 and 1,200. These are 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I believe they're over 1,000 square feet each.
Okay. And then with respect to the townhomes, average.
Yep. So
cost.
when we originally approached this, the building costs in 2020, as many know, were very low. Lumber was bottomed out, and the goal was to market at around the 165, 170 range. We're about a 15% increase because that's where material has increased too.
Okay. So you're getting closer to 2.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I understand, the need for development in our city. And, what we're looking at in terms of what a market rate is for our area versus what many of our residents in the city of Harrisburg can afford. There's a huge disagreement in terms of that, right? We know what our per capita income is per resident and what some of these units are looking to do, particularly the development that occurs in this area of the city. So, if you can continue to try to, work with us and try to meet us, somewhere, because one thing we don't want to see is residents constantly priced out of, our area, and, folks that have been here and are looking to advance themselves, but they can't find affordable housing in communities, in our city, makes it extremely difficult for, residents to work to improve their quality of life. No further questions right now.
Thank you. Councilwoman Daniels? President Williams is state.
I'm not, please believe me, I encourage development in the city of Harrisburg. But I also want you to take into consideration the needs of the residents here.
Absolutely.
And right now, it seems like you're not, you're catering to a younger group. Because they're looking at townhouses, they're looking at apartments. We still have single families here, and I encourage you to look at building homes for them and encouraging affordable housing for them. I know you're making your money too. I know you want to see development, and I encourage it, because I don't want to see the blighted lots. But also take in consideration, you're coming to the city of Harrisburg, and you have to, as Mr. Majors stated, there's needs that the families here.
Absolutely. And
housing is one of them.
Yep.
It's a priority.
Anybody else? Next week is our last legislative session, correct? All right, we'll move this forward, but I think maybe the applicant, we should meet with President Williams to address some of her concerns. Whoever she'd like in addition to that meeting as well. Hand raised. We're just because if we go through the next resolution, we'll let you address it during public comment. Okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have resolution 81. Resolution 81, correct?
Resolution 81 of 2021 is a resolution approving a preliminary final land development plan to rehabilitate the existing building on the principal parcel at 2101 North 6th Street into a mix of uses to consolidate 13 existing parcels into 5 distinct lots and to develop vacant lots into the adjoining block. Excuse me.
Okay, Mr. Knight.
Yes, so the application here before council is for the primary property at 2101 North 6th Street, kind of known as the Hudson Building. I think it's part of the applicant's proposal. They're renaming it the Atlas Building, or maybe the Atlas Project. But it involves in addition to that main parcel, a lot of other vacant blocks within, or vacant parcels within that block bounded by Jefferson, Forest, Maclay, and North 6th Street there. And so the overall project is going to involve a lot of consolidation of these individual lots, but they're still going to be separated by rights of way. So normally in a situation like this, we'd recommend that they can vacate rights of way and then consolidate them all. However, there are still some residents with access needs to the rear of their properties. So they didn't want to vacate the streets and have to create issues in that regard. So those are still remaining as rights of way through the block, but they're consolidating the properties that are separated by these individual rights of way. And the properties to the east of this main structure are going to largely be surface parking lots for to accommodate any businesses on site or customers and client needs for parking. And we'll get to it in the conditions, but as part of the condition of approval that the Planning Commission adopted, they are agreeing to phase in the parking so that it will only be developed as necessary, so that we're not creating like big asphalt parking lots when they're not being used because the building's not at full occupancy, for example. So with that being said, and I think the building itself is intended for office use. So I don't believe at this moment, at this time, that there's any sort of residential component to the project. It will be the offices of the applicant as well as other potential office and retail space that I think they're still working on securing tenants for that space. And again, that goes to kind of the phased in nature of the parking proposals on the lots to the east. So the Planning Commission recommended that the City Council approve the request with the following conditions. The applicant will submit the necessary zoning relief requests and receive approval from the zoning hearing board prior to recordation of the final plan set, and that relates to those parking areas as they become developed for things like construction setbacks, impervious surface, et cetera. It'll all depend on how the specifics of the development. The applicant will coordinate with the city engineer's office on the reconstruction or improvement of sidewalks at various locations around the perimeter of the project site, and the potential installation of a bus stop at the northern end of the site along 6th Street, which will require coordination with CAT as well. And so the sidewalk along 6th Street and even Maclay Street of the principal parcel is in fairly good condition, but the frontages along other properties associated with this project are in poor condition or overgrown, and certainly not ADA compliant. So as part of this, they'll bring those up to ADA standards. And then I believe when we were speaking with the former city engineer, Wayne Martin, he noted that as part of the CAT bus stop optimization study, they may have a bus stop on this block. And he recommended that it be away from the Maclay 6th Street intersection so that the buses stopping there didn't create backups with traffic or dangerous turning movements. So that was what that condition refers to. So that would be in coordination with the city engineer's office and eventually CAT. The applicant will provide a permanent public easement for the northern terminus of Elizabeth Street across the accessory parking lot to the east to connect with the public right-of-way of Jefferson Street. And the reason that is put in there is because parking lot B that's indicated on the site plans is at the northern end of Elizabeth Street, which is a one-way street. So you have to give people a way to get out once you're using that public right-of-way into the middle of the block. And so the permanent public easement will go through their parking lot, which will be on private property, to enable somebody to get out through the site. The applicant will, and that was done at the request of the former city engineer as well. The applicant will coordinate with the Planning Bureau regarding the type and location of bike racks to be installed along the sidewalks fronting the building on the principal property, and that would be largely probably against the building along 6th Street. The applicant will note the phased nature of proposed parking lots C and D on the final plan set, with provision for the temporary development of these spaces as green space and or pervious pavers. And one of the ideas they had for temporary use of these lots until and if they were developed as parking would be for things like food truck fest, community events, things of that nature. So it would be maybe hardscaped with pervious pavers, but it would not be reserved for parking. It would be kind of reserved for flex space, I guess. And then the Planning Bureau recommends that the applicant coordinate with local arts organizations and preferably the artist who installed the mural at 610 Maclay Street to incorporate murals or other public art on site. So the building with the mural on the side on Maclay Street there will be demolished as part of this. And so we recommended initially that they maybe utilize that mural in a wall that surrounds a parking lot or somehow other bring that mural back to kind of life on the site. They said they weren't sure if they could do that, but they did reach out to the actual artist that painted that, I believe, and spoken with them about potentially doing another mural on the building itself or on another part of the site. So the Planning Commission recommended that City Council approve the request for the following reasons. The project will result in the rehabilitation and occupancy of a long vacant historic structure at a highly visible corner and gateway into the Camp Curtin neighborhood, and as proposed, will create spaces for local businesses and entrepreneurs to establish themselves, grow, and thrive. The applicant has satisfactorily addressed the outstanding issues related to the traffic impact study and the stormwater management plan, and will continue coordination with the City Engineer's Office and Capital Region Water respectively regarding those issues. The proposed parking lot phase-in design will ensure that space is retained within the project site for community events and has the potential to ensure that only space which is absolutely needed for vehicular parking is developed as such, with the possibility for other uses of that space that better support the neighborhood and its residents. Finally, the applicant has pursued a lengthy and comprehensive public engagement strategy with the community regarding the types of uses that might occupy the building, the design of the site to ensure that it is well integrated into the neighborhood, and potential programming of spaces on site to support the surrounding community.
And sir, would you mind just stating your name and title for the record?
Sure. My name is Andy Levine. I'm a project manager with Barry Ice and Associates representing this project.
Do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'm the civil engineer for this project. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have to the best of my ability.
First question is, will there be any opportunities for MWBE participation, and what would that look like?
The project is being managed by the GEM Group, which is a WBE company. If you're talking about the individual contractors, or are you talking about
Individual contractors, subcontractors?
I really can't answer that. I know that we do have, there are contractors working on the site right now. They've already demoed a lot of the interior of the building. I don't necessarily know if they were minority or women's business enterprises.
Okay, could you find that out for
Yeah,
us?
sure.
Provide that, and then, oh yeah, they are.
Excuse me. Can I address that actually? So that project recently received. Just so that's addressed here, that project recently received RAC funding, so it has to follow all those.
Right. Yeah, I saw that today.
Sorry, I just wanted to.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
Yeah, so-
And just for the benefit of the public, could you talk about what receiving those grant dollars would mean for the project and how they would be allocated?
To be honest with you, I'm a civil engineer. I'm not a financial wizard.
So who is handling this project and why within that person?
We were just notified that it was going to be on the agenda on Monday, and he was unable to make it.
I think what we might want to do here is have a breakout session and have the main person spearheading the project.
Have Mr. Mouse come.
Yeah, and maybe address some of these questions. I don't think they'll be adequately able to answer what you are looking for.
Yeah, it sounds like you have more financial aspect.
I guarantee you. I know this is the 60th.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll spare you getting peppered.
I'm not going to pepper you. I just have avoided the questions because the project has been ongoing. And I was concerned that the city would fix it.
There's a lot of interest in the community on this
yeah.
project, and I know there's been a lot of community engagement. So I think for the benefit of
I know the
council.
building permits have been submitted.
Right, but they weren't there prior to that.
They were not there prior to.
Not at all.
But my recommendation as chair is that we'll have a breakout where we talk to Mr. Mouse about the project and kind of answer the questions council will have. Sure. Your name and title, or,
I'm Kevin Butts,
okay,
born and raised in Harrisburg. Mission community engagement. I run the biggest social media page in the city, bigger than the cities, bigger than the school districts combined, called Concerned Citizens of the Harrisburg Community. That's mine, and that's one topic that got a big hit on my page. And I'll tell you how that came about, which is one reason why I'm here today. I happen to just be walking down the street. I mean, honestly, just walking, going to my grandma lives up the street, fast enough. My dad's house still up the street. I was born and raised across the street. That's where I was born, raised. I was 18 years old. It was empty. I know what they was doing. So I walked past there, see people outside. I asked, as a community person, I didn't know me from a can of paint. I go in and can I look and see what y'all doing? Sure. He was a nice guy to me. Gave me a tour of the place, and I'm gonna tell me what was going on, tell me what future plans he had with it. And his whole thing was he wants to have minority input, minority businesses, come in there, and that was a plus for me. You know what I mean? I've never been here before. I never came down to a community, never came down to a city councilman in my life. I'm the face of, I got 207,000 people monthly that view my page. Over 20-something thousand people, 14,500 current members. I say about 25, 30 aren't members that's viewing it and viewing it on a regular basis, but monthly, and I got the stats on it. So what I'm saying is I'm getting inbox, oh man, that's great, just off of one picture, one post. I just say, hey, can I take a picture with this, what's going on? I know what the community wants because I see it. Not saying I don't know the ins and outs of the permits. I'm not saying that. But for 20-something years, me living right there, and I seen that building deteriorate, I hated that. So it was a buzz for me. You know what I mean? I don't know what involves in everything else. That's not my cup of tea. I don't know. But I want to see my community built the right way. You know what I mean? I agree with you with the housing. You know what I mean? We need single, affordable housing for families here. You know what I mean? And affordable meaning our median income is not that much. You know what I mean? These single families that come here, these younger, my daughter just moved downtown. I know, but the thing with her is, I know there's not too many people that, like right now, she can't afford one of them places. You know what I mean? She want to start her family soon. So we need places that these young kids, if they're, because these apartments going on, they can't afford them either. So there's a range here where y'all missing a lot of folks. You know what I mean? And that's just on that topic, just what you were saying, marijuana, elect. But I think things like this, that it was the first time this guy, like I said, he didn't know me. I didn't tell him about my page until afterwards. And he brought me into this building and said this, and then I'm like, then I told him who I was and the following that I had. And I just thought that was, you know what I mean? And Westburn knows me personally. I love you, Wanda. You already know that. You know, I know my whole family. But I don't put my neck out when I don't come down here, and I never met none of y'all. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm just saying. I knew this was going on today. And I just said, let me come hear about it. And I'm just coming up here. I'm astonished at what I've been here. Like, even with this, the trade union stuff, like you said, you've been here 100 years. I ain't never heard that. You know what I mean? That's a great, we want community engagement. If I got the biggest platform on in the city, none of y'all hit me up. Get myself out here. We got felons that need jobs.
I appreciate the comment.
That's all I want to say.
Bring it back to the, yeah.
That's all I want to say.
And I want to apologize because I know another constituent had raised their hand about making comment. I didn't know that Mr. Butts was just coming before as a citizen. I thought he might have been a representative. Okay, apologies.
And let me just, Mr. Butts, I am very much aware of what they're doing here, but I want them to have the right credentials, right permits in place. Also, when they had the fencing coming out and no one was able to walk on the sidewalk. So I was concerned about that as well. They had to walk in the street. I seen kids coming from school walking in the street. So that was some of the questions I had.
Okay.
About how he had constructed a fence and he cut the whole sidewalk going from the Clay all the way down to almost Jefferson Street, where he fenced in that area.
Yeah,
And
that-
kids are continuously getting off the bus and walking, and they have to walk in the street. So I wanted them to do a better job of putting another fence up so the children can walk on the sidewalk. So that's some of the questions I had. That's why I wanted to be here.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted
No,
to
no,
know-
I can.
And I
can-
was at the meeting. There
Okay.
right in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Okay, it's right there. But I wanted to know what use he's going to do with the building, because I heard several things about what he's going to do. I heard he's going to have apartments upstairs. I heard he's
There's
gonna
no
have
apartments upstairs.
Groceries down, a grocery store down the bottom.
That was,
I heard
there-
there's going to be a couple of beauty shops or whatever.
I don't know that anything is signed.
Okay, so I just wanted to
So-
hear exactly what
Yeah.
what his plans are for that building. And I'm like Mr. Butts. I've lived uptown all my life.
Yeah,
And I'd like to see something done with that building because it was an eyesore for years.
right. And now it's being cleaned up, but you know, we don't have any, the only tenant that we have for sure is the Mighty Group is going to have their offices on the second part of the second floor. That is the only 100% guaranteed tenant for the building.
And I know he has involved a lot of MBEWP.
Yes.
They know that from attending the meeting, sitting in the park lot. I do know that.
And with the funding that he received, there's a requirement for that.
I just had questions to ask.
Yeah, as far as the permits, you know, the existing permits, we have a demolition permit. And then a building permit for the roof, I believe, is in place for, you know, redoing the existing roof.
I see the site, you know, where he's going to have, he has the parking, and I see he's been using that as a dumping site. So is that where he's going to have the parking lots?
Yes, he has, let me grab the plan and I can,
That's okay. I know everything about
you
it. I
know,
walked
the
around.
existing parking lot is.
Walked around. I just want to
that's-
make sure it's safe too, because of what-
Yeah, that's-
it wasn't safe for the kids. They were walking in. There's a part of the fence on the side by the YMCA that was open. So just
Oh.
time to look at that. So the kids.
Where the existing fences,
Right.
and it was cut, so they were
Sure
coming in
that's
through there.
closed. Right.
Yeah, well, yes, that should definitely be closed, because security of any construction site is paramount importance, especially for the
That's another
contractor.
question I had, whether he was gonna put up additional fence.
Yeah. No.
I think what we'll do, just legal, just get clarification. We just have a work session where we discuss this, or
At the next legislative session, you would have to suspend the rules to. At the end of the year. But at the next legislative session, you could suspend the rules to discuss and then.
Mr. Knight, could you make sure the applicant, talk to the applicant, make sure that present or representative answer the question? Sure. Thank you. Leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that'll conclude the work for the community economic development.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. At this time, I will open up the floor for public comment. Those who would like to come to the mic, please do so now from my right.
Good evening. Good evening, Council. Crystal Davis, Regina Street. I just have a question. The previous city's engineer, Wayne Martin, was working on a traffic study for us over on Regina Street. And since he's no longer there, I was wondering who can we follow up with?
I was just gonna say his assistant was back there about 2 minutes ago, and I looked back and he left. We could ask him, but.
And his name is?
Is that his name? I thought it was. No, it was, he works with, both of the gentlemen work with Wayne.
I think it was Thomas Marshall.
Okay,
That was with-
okay.
So-
Well, give me his name again.
Thomas Marshall.
Follow up with Thomas Marshall. Okay, that's my only question. Thank you.
If you call 311 and ask for engineering.
Was this traffic study at Regina in 16 or 17?
It was between 14th and 16th in Regina.
Oh, okay. I know he's working on a study on the 15th Street corridor, so that's why it's, okay.
Hi, Laura Harding. I'm with Camp Curtin Neighborhoods United. I'm the treasurer and secretary. My address is 2246 North 3rd Street. With respect to Resolution 78, 2021, the previous one that was discussed, I just wanted to make a couple of comments about that. President Williams is absolutely correct. I have attended, along with the president of CCNU, almost every planning commission and zoning hearing board meeting since the summer. And we have seen application after application for development of apartments. And specifically, they're mostly one-bedroom apartments with very few, like a handful of 2-bedroom or 3 bedrooms in the building. And three of those development projects are in the Midtown area near where this one is. And to me, that raises some red flags because it allows for legal discrimination against families. If you have 1-bedroom apartments, predominantly 1-bedroom apartments, then you can exclude children from being tenants in the building with their parents. And I think that that's one angle, and another angle is to maximize profit. You have more 1-bedroom apartments, you have more rent coming in. Now, since the Camp Curtin Memorial Mitchell United Methodist Church was mentioned, although the owner didn't seem to know the name of that church that he bought, we are a designated 501c3, Camp Curtin Neighborhoods United, and we have not been approached about that church. Now, that church, the basement, used to house our free daycare. We lost that location when the church was sold. But it's interesting since Ms. Bowers was asking about community outreach, since we are the neighborhood association for that very community, and no one has approached us. This is a ongoing issue with this particular developer that I don't know how the planning department verifies that outreach was done, because I heard it mentioned that extensive outreach was done. It wasn't. Now, with regard to the Resolution 81, with the Hudson building, that is an environmental justice site. Environmental racism has taken place with the dumping of contaminated toxic debris into the community right next to a YMCA, a park, and a playground. Now, the Department of Environmental Protection has been out there investigating, and they took air quality samples, and we don't have the results of that yet. Now, this is the second issue with this particular developer, who was also responsible for destroying our historic hotel next to the Jackson House on 6th Street. Now, if this is potentially criminal activity that has taken place with this toxic debris that was dumped throughout our city, I think the city should have a process in place to take action and revoke their mercantile permits. They should be debarred. They should not be able to be working in our city and potentially harming our members of our community.
Thank you. Anyone else to my right? Anyone in the middle? Anyone to my left? Hearing none? Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, I didn't see you. Oh, I do.
I'm over there in the corner.
Okay, they had you in the corner.
Yeah, they sent me to the corner today. What can I say? Pam Parson, Holly Street. I found it interesting that when the applicant, when the presentation was made about the applicant for the Hudson building, and they mentioned the mural, which is on the building that was once the neighborhood center of the United Methodist Church. And the mural was painted by Tony Truesdale, who designed that and painted it with community residents and children who were in the program at the neighborhood center. I found it interesting that they mentioned that the applicant reached out to the artist because that's not possible, because the artist died a few months ago. And I know that she was not contacted prior to that. So for me, that just says one more thing about that particular project, and that we are often not given correct information, that there are little sideways aspects to it, little backroom deals, and we won't quite tell you the truth. So you can add that to the many reservations that we already have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parson. Anyone else to my left? Hearing none. The meeting is officially adjourned. I think.